Anytime. Hey, I think we're alive. We're alive. All right, folks. So, our monthly visit with Patrick Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative is about to start. Let me apologize. I went to a concert Wednesday night. I screamed like a madman, so my voice is still a little shot. Haven't recovered from that yet. I do apologize if I break and I sound like I'm going through puberty. I, I, I assure you that is not the case, but my voice is not the same. So, anyway, without further ado, forewarning everybody, this is going to be a longer musical intro tonight, about 2 minutes worth, so bear with me. It's a metal intro, mind you. I went to see Trivium Wednesday night, best concert I've been to. It was the energy was amazing. My daughter bought me VIP tickets, so I got to get autographs and a photo with the band. Such an amazing time, and I'm still riding that high a little bit. So we're going to start out with some Trivium to start the show. But I said about 2 minutes of intro, so bear with me, and then we will get Patrick on, and then in about 15 minutes in, I'm going to tell you about a sponsor for the show. This week will be the first week for a sponsorship for an episode of the Missouri Liberty Report. Happy to talk about that. You can see the product right behind me here to my left. And I will bring those into camera view in just a moment. So everybody bear with me. We'll get the recording started. And we will literally rock and roll. Folks, and we are back with another edition of eardrum bleeding, freedom loving podcast called the Missouri Liberty Report. Now, some of you are like, why is that intro so long? It's because John went to a Trivium concert Wednesday night. John's still riding the high a little bit, even though I had to go to work today, and they sucked a bunch of my happiness out. Amazing, amazing time. So anyway, I don't want to go on about that too long because I could talk about the concert for a half an hour and how just my eardrums got melted. My face got blasted off because I was literally probably like 8 feet from the stage. For 4 hours I stood there and just got my eardrums melted. It is beautiful. But anyway, again, first Friday of every month, don't forget, we have Patrick Holland on from the Missouri Freedom Initiative, a fellow fighter for freedom and liberty here in the state who is leading by example, going up and talking to legislators and even crafting bills, writing outlines for bills, even. So, Patrick, how are you this evening, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, John. Thank you so much for having me on again. I almost missed the intro here. I was too busy buying a slap happy beverage online right now.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we've got I didn't pull up the audio, which maybe I'll look for. I think Patrick, you sent it to me. An interesting audio piece from Rhino. Was it Rhino?
Rhino. I
Uh,
sent you a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, remind me.
there was a YouTube video about who the governor may appoint as attorney general when Eric Schmidt wins
Oh,
his
no.
election.
Yep, I'm sorry. I haven't gone through that data yet.
Okay.
So I can't comment on it yet, but believe it or not, I'll be looking into that real quick because Schmidt is definitely going to win,
Yeah.
the Senate race, and the governor will have to replace him.
Yeah, and if it's true what was in that video, let's just put it there. We're going to have to fight against that because it didn't sound very good from the 2 minutes and some odd minutes of information. Was it Rhino Hunter? Is that what it is?
Okay, it could have been Rhino Hunter that did the video.
I believe that's what it was. I can never keep his name straight, but I think it was Rhino Hunter put it out. It was like a 2 minute and 30-second video about this appointee that they believe Parson would pick, and if that information is correct, there's something we're going to have to get in front of. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk a little bit here, Patrick.
Sure.
How's just since last month? How are things going for you, and a little bit of maybe something that you've been working on lately?
Sure, you bet. In fact, in the last month, we're working on several things. First off, just to let everyone know who's been following our work or participating in our campaign to get rid of sales tax on food in the state of Missouri. That unfortunately has been put by the wayside right now, and I can explain partially why. I have never claimed to be the smartest person on the planet. In fact, I'm probably one of the dumbest. But not even Ron Calzone caught this, but Mike Moon found, and Mike Moon is a senator here in Missouri, a state senator, found a small section of the Constitution that linked 1% of the state's sales tax on food. 1% of the state's capture on sales tax on food, which is 1.225%. 1% of that is somehow nailed down in the Constitution to education, which complicated the matter of getting rid of sales tax on food. Since we are a constitutional organization, we like to go by the Constitution. We're going to have to dive much more deeply into that in regular legislative sessions. So we might have to get a ballot initiative done for that. So that's the update on that. We did one heck of a grassroots effort. Many people called, emailed, visited Jeff City to get rid of the sales tax on food. And unfortunately, we did find a small stumbling block. So apart from that, I finalized all the language for the outline for the gold and silver bill for the state of Missouri, what we're calling MEPA, the Missouri Inflation Protection Act. And so at any rate, that has been submitted, and my understanding is it's currently being converted into an actual bill by Senator Bill Eigel, right here in the state of Missouri, another state senator. And so and as soon as that's converted into bill language, that will be shared with many other states. There's lots of other people in other states that want to run the same language. So we're very excited about that. There's other things that we're working on too, but nothing we're ready to announce at this time. But the silver and gold stuff should be coming up pretty soon. As soon as there's legislative language, you can bet I will be sharing that with the world because like I said, other states are looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. When that's all done and filed, that is going to be the talk of the state, I believe, and maybe even the talk of the country, because this is a necessary action to try to counteract what the federal government and our Federal Reserve Bank spending, printing. This is a necessary action, and Honestly, it's another thing that we honestly shouldn't have to do, but the way of the world, it has to be done. This
Well, John, I want to point out something. I'm sorry for interrupting, but
No,
this
go
is
ahead.
kind of critical. Central banks around the world are hoarding gold, particularly in the last 2 months. So, you pay attention to what central banks are doing because they know everything before it happens, right?
Right.
So, the bankers always know everything before it happens. So, at any rate, the central banks around the world, this would be Bank of Japan, Bank of England, Bank of China, Federal Reserve, all the big banks that you think of, the central banks are hoarding gold right now. That is a sign. That's a sign. Basically, maybe we should be doing the same thing. If they're hoarding gold, that means they don't have a whole lot of faith in their own currencies that they're overprinting, is what it means. So, since gold is now a tier 1 asset under the I think it's Basel III rules, from the International Monetary Fund, gold is now measured at 100% of its dollar value. Central banks worldwide. So, and they just completed Basel III, I believe. It was a 2-year program, and I think it's nearly complete now. All the central banks treat it as a tier 1 asset. So they have plans for gold. So in the last 2 years, as I said, Basel III, that means central banks around the world are now valuing gold as opposed to a tier 3 asset where they had it before, where it was half of the dollar value was what they could, value it at in their vaults. Now they can value it for the full amount. So, and then now that they've done that, now they're hoarding gold. So, using gold and silver as money may seem a little bit esoteric, to John Q. Public. But the fact of the matter is the central banks don't consider it that way because they've converted it into a full value reserve, if you will. And they're hoarding it now. They're buying as much as they can. So at any rate, that is just on top of everything that I've said before. With the people being able to use gold and silver. My goodness, it's constitutional. It's actually in our Constitution that we use gold and silver as money. And they've never actually written an amendment saying that we shouldn't be using gold and silver for money. So we should still be able to use it. But a piece of legislation that becomes a law that tells businesses, sure, you can use gold and silver if you want, might encourage some of those businesses to start using it, and then encouraging use throughout the general population, encouraging states to accept gold and silver as payment of taxes is a real good way to do that. That helps, legitimize it. And this bill covers that as well. So at any rate, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I had to tell you about the central banks. That's a new story. It just came out yesterday morning, I think.
Oh, no, it's fine. And, if anybody's going to poo-poo gold and silver, there's your answer. They're like, well, why are the central banks hoarding it now? Why are they buying it all up if it's no good and it's that's old school? Why are all the money printers grabbing at it as fast as they can if it's useless to you? And I mean, there's the logic. I mean, there's the answer to the question. If you think it's that's old school, no. Apparently not. If all the central banks are grabbing it up as quickly as they can, A, that tells you something's afoot, and B, it's not a worthless currency. All right. So, without further ado, folks, first sponsor that I've had for this podcast and this episode, let me tell you about a product, and not only the product, but kind of the message behind the product. So what you'll see here, hopefully the camera can pick this up. I can turn it the right way. This is called Mellow Cello. It is from a company right here in central Missouri. Okay? So basically it is Delta 8 infused limoncello, and it is handcrafted. This does not go off to some factory. This is done right there at their residence. And you can see, very nice looking bottle, very nice looking label. But again, Delta 8, about 10. I think it's, I don't have my spectacles on. I don't remember how many. I think it's 10 milligrams per serving of Delta 8 THC. And again, glare from the overhead lights is screwing everything up. But again, a very classy looking bottle, a very nice looking product. They really went all out. Now, these come in 3 different size bottles. We have 500 milliliter, 250 milliliters. Okay. It is 10 milligrams per 1 ounce. So 10 milligrams of Delta 8 THC per ounce of liquid. But we have 125, 250, and 500 milliliter bottles. And they all look just like this. A nice thick glass bottle. Nice stopper on top. And so this is, to me, this is, there's so many things about this product. A, that's something unique. Okay, there's not a lot of companies that produce a product like this. Now, there are some states, if you live in another state and you are interested in this product, there are some states where Delta 8 is not allowed. Missouri is not one of those states. You can buy Delta 8 products. Now, if you use a hemp product or maybe you like Delta 8, then you go into shops, you can buy Delta 8 and Delta 10 products. Delta 9 in the state of Missouri is still considered a drug and blah, blah, blah. Delta 8 and Delta 10 are legal in the state of Missouri. And again, this is Delta 8 infused limoncello. Now, the producer here, he lived in Italy for a while he was in the service, and he learned how to make limoncello there. And so this is, limoncello is an Italian-style beverage. He learned right in that country how to make it, brought that knowledge home, and now he's making mellocello. But that's not all, okay? Because there's a lot behind the ownership and this company. And it's not just, we want to make Delta 8 infused beverages. That's part of it. But there's a whole lot more. Let me bring up the website so everybody can see it. Now, if you go out down in the description box of this video, you will see a link to the website. But let me show you the website. It is slaphappybeverage.com, okay? And you can come up here, you can click on About Us. This will, and you'll see John and his wife, Kara. And they kind of go into a little bit of, their history, things like that. Their service in the military. And there's some family medical issues that are involved here too, is why he got so involved in cannabis. Now, I didn't ask him if I could go into that, so I'm not going to. But here's something that I want you to look at, and I think this is vitally important. So you can see they're a member of the Missouri Hemp Trade Association. They also have an organization called 1,000 Ripples. So their dream is to build a rest and relaxation cabin in Gasconade County for veterans and cancer patients. So if they're passing through and maybe they're going to go visit Herman, they're going to build a cabin for anybody who's a vet, especially a disabled vet or a cancer patient, to stay in for the night and then, travel on. Maybe they're traveling to go for treatments. And this will be a cabin that they can stay at right there at their residence. And you can see the quote here: "You can begin saving the world by saving one man at a time. All else is grandiose romanticism or politics." Charles Bukowski. Here's something that he wanted me to highlight, and I think this is vitally, vitally important, okay? A cannabis nurse. So they have a link here that you can find a cannabis nurse. Now, what this is going to do, depending on your ailment and what, if you have, let's say, cancer, or you have a degenerative disease or a neurological issue or whatever, maybe it's a chronic pain issue, this nurse is going to factor in how your body reacts. And then by your body weight, the issue you're having, they're going to figure out a dosage and what type of cannabis product you should be using to treat your ailment. Because a lot of people, now, and this is not a slight at anybody, this is not, oh, stupid people. This is just reality. A lot of people just go into their dispensary or what have you and just, it's all trial and error on how, what type of, what variant of hemp or marijuana they use and how much they smoke or how much oil they use. And is it indica? Is it sativa? All these things. Now there's a way to link up to an actual person who specializes in cannabis. And John actually helped write and figured out dosages by body weight and the like and ailments to figure out dosages and relayed that information to a nurse. They go, it's a deep dive, folks. It's a deep dive into cannabis. And again, cannabis, some people are still like, oh, I don't like it, shouldn't use it. And I think that's a little ridiculous. But he says I can go ahead. So John has a son, and I don't remember the disease, but literally his body produces tumors. And most of them are, most of these people that have this ailment, they produce benign tumors. Unfortunately, his son developed them on the brain, the spine, and had to go through a lot of chemotherapy treatments to get the tumors to just stop growing. Well, John and his wife decided that they were going to look at cannabis. They went to a different state because in Missouri at the time, there was nothing. And started using it at night with their son so it wouldn't affect him during the day at school. And he actually sent me a link to an article written by Bill McClellan at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch discussing this. And those tumors stopped growing. Some of them disappeared. Now, the doctor who was in charge of his son's, healthcare or whatever, he wouldn't really come right out and say, yeah, that was cannabis, because they changed some of the drugs. Okay, they changed some of the drugs, so it might be that. They wouldn't come out and say that, yeah, the cannabis is really what kicked this in the butt. There are a lot of stories out there, folks, about people who have healed themselves with cancer and other things by a diet change and cannabis use. A lot of times it's oils, or a salve or something. But they used cannabis when doctors were like, well, here's your, because when you go in for cancer treatment, what is it? It's chemotherapy and radiation. That's your choices. They don't really talk about diet changes, especially sugar. Stop consuming sugar. Things like that. It's just, chemotherapy and radiation. There are some other things out there. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. But there's too many stories out there to say otherwise. But John and his wife, Kara, are amazing people. And they have worn the T-shirt many, many times with this whole cannabis thing. He's been through fighting at the state level up in Jefferson City, talking to different, regulatory organizations, all these things, trying to figure out how to best help others. And again, I think that's one of the most important things here, folks, is that not only is this an interesting product, okay? Why am I... turn that off. Sorry. Not only is this an interesting product, because it's something new, and it's something that you don't see on store shelves all the time, but the mission statement behind it is vitally important. Now, I will tell you that John says he considers cannabis to be the new litmus test. And at this time, in November of 2022, we have a lot of issues that divide us. But over 68% of Americans support the legalization of marijuana, to include 19 states who have completely legalized adult use, 28 states have various medical programs, and 4 states completely prohibiting marijuana, like the federal government. It has been decriminalized medically sanctioned use or sanctioned recreational use. And some of them have ratified amendments to the Constitution. It has become pretty clear that cannabis has become the new tea. And here's a quote from Thomas Jefferson. First and principally, the cultivation of our primary staples of wheat, tobacco, and hemp for market. This is 1811. The founders, most of you know this, hemp was an important product because, you're talking paper, clothing, construction, medicine, food for animals. You can make biodiesel out of it. Hemp and cannabis are vitally important. Now, back then, they didn't have government officials walking around going, "Is this under 0.3% THC?" So the founders back then weren't anal about their hemp or marijuana. They didn't go around. Of course, now they didn't have the technology, but they weren't anal like that either, and wanted to check the THC content level of hemp. They understood its importance as far as the things you could do with it, and that was that. That it was just literally that was it. That's what we have to get back to. Looking at it not only as medicine, but all these other things that you can do with it. Now, John is 100%, and this is funny because we just talked about this evening. He throws people off because he has this mellow cello, and he's big into hemp. But he's steadfastly against Amendment 3. And we've talked about Amendment 3 enough on here that everybody knows how awful Amendment 3 is. But people are like, wait a minute, you're a hemp guy and you're against Amendment 3? Here's his argument, and I've stated this, and I used his argument on this show. The Constitution is to limit the powers, the size and scope of government. It is not to be used to limit people. And Amendment 3 will put a constitutional limit on possession for the people. So it's literally using the Constitution of the state of Missouri against the people, which is a big no-no. You don't do that. That's what Amendment 3 would do. Now, John also has, which I'm going to have to copy and paste these and put them up somewhere. It's a lot to read, but it's good reading. John has typed out a couple documents. Cannabis is the new litmus test. He does go into Mr. Anslinger, who didn't think the Constitution applied to all Americans the same. That was shown by his testimony to Congress because he said there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana use. That's around the 1930s. So that gives you an idea of what they were, the hype that they were throwing to prohibit cannabis. But John goes deeper into that and says cannabis prohibition is against God. Now, I will give you a slight rundown because there's a lot to read here. But basically, cannabis is not evil. And he kind of relates it to guns. If you're going to take away guns, well, the gun isn't evil. If a person decides to murder another human being with it, that person's evil, and they commit an evil act. But the gun's not evil. Same way with cannabis. If you believe that God created cannabis and God creates nothing evil, how is cannabis evil? Right? It's the person using it. Some people smoke cannabis just to get high. And you know what? It's none of my business. They're not hurting anybody else. Who freaking cares? That's how I look at it. That's the way John and his wife look at it. Who cares? And there's some interesting stuff from Thomas Aquinas in here, who even Thomas Aquinas, or St. Thomas Aquinas, I should say, when he talked about prostitution, said, yeah, I know people don't want prostitution, but if prostitution was illegal and it never existed, then people would act on their lustfulness. And he even said, even though a lot of people look at prostitution as evil, it probably keeps a lot of lustful people from committing rape. Things of that nature. And when you prohibit something like cannabis, you create a black market. And that's where people can get injured. You can cause harm from a black market. And so prohibition, as we know, just doesn't work. But I love this product is amazing. I think it's amazing. Again, it's a small market, and he has the ability to. I think he's gotten on the ground floor of something that could be very big, because you just don't find it everywhere. Now, I had a list, and I'm stupid and I drop stuff. I have a list. There are about 4 stores right now that carry this. And before I forget, he's got some other stuff coming out too. He's going to have a whiskey green tea that he will be coming out with next year. He also is going to have gummies, CBD gummies, or Delta 8 gummies, that he's going to have for sale and to use in clinical research, so they can use them to research how to use them for pain management and and other ailments, how to manage them with the gummies. If you are around, especially Lynn, you have Casper 66, which is a Conoco station on the east side of town. It would be on the right-hand side if you're driving west on Highway 50 into Lynn. You'll see Casper 66 on the right. It's available there. In Herman, you got 3 different places. You have the Village Market, you've got the Missouri Trading Post, and you have the Piano Bar. And I know that he told me that, now, Casey Rich, you can go to the website, which again, let me pull it back up so you can see it here. Turn my display back on. slaphappybeverage.com. And you can order it straight from the website. But, yeah, they went to Labadie. They went to a place in Labadie and took a case. Stood there for a half an hour talking to the guy. 6 bottles sold in that half an hour that they stood there and talked to that gentleman. 6 bottles just gone in a half an hour. Again, I think this is going to be something very big. And I'm very super excited and very proud of the fact that John and his wife chose me and chose to sponsor an episode of the Missouri Liberty Report. So again, if you go down into the description panel on this video, you will see a link for Mellocello, Delta 8 infused limoncello drink. Again, 10 milligrams of Delta 8 THC per 1 ounce of liquid. And again, they have 125, 250, and 500 milliliter bottles. All your Delta 8 needs right there in a nice zesty lemon beverage. So before I continue on, John and Kara, I greatly appreciate you trusting me with this. And every week, folks, you're going to see, so just in case, I know it might be a little hard to see back here, you're going to see that Slap Happy sticker right up there on my backdrop. And these nice, lovely beverage bottles will be right here, sitting behind me. Every week, the link will be to the website will be in the description of the video, along with some of our folks like the Missouri Freedom Initiative and MO Liberty Radio and KeyRadio.live. They're going to be a staple in our description. So please, if you're interested in Delta 8 products, check out slaphappybeverage.com. Again, John and Kara, thank you so much for sponsoring an episode. This was super exciting for me or somebody to trust me to do this. And I will figure out a way. Maybe I'll just put all this text in a description on a video of John's writing here on cannabis. And before I forget, one more thing, and we'll get back to Patrick, I promise. John also wrote this little book. It's called The Patriot, the Philosopher, and the Madman. If you are interested in one of these, it's not a real big book, but he wrote these, and he sold them. These were available on Amazon. And here's the thing: I got John to put his little autograph in there, and of course his message is "Keep freedom alive" with his autograph on the inside of the book. I have 5 of these. If anybody's interested in this, in the chat, at the end of the thing, please make sure you, if you want a copy, I'll mail this a copy of this to you. Just leave me your name and your full mailing address, and I will get you a copy of The Patriot, the Philosopher, and the Madman. All right? All right, Patrick. Sorry, I went a little. I just, these people, they paid their money for their sponsorship, and I wanted to show them a lot of love. So,
and you did an awesome job, man.
Thank you. All right.
You know what? Those sponsors are obviously wonderful, wonderful people. But I'll tell you what, next time, maybe they would consider a coupon code for your listeners, like 10% off or something like that. So, yeah, I hate to put pressure on people and put people on the spot and everything. But so at any rate, that's just something that they may think of doing that, but help spur some sales.
Yeah. I mean, and one other thing I want to mention is he's working with local businesses. He is not working with like these big conglomerates. So
large conglomerates.
Yep. It's people, hemp farms and everything around him. That's who he's working with. So that's another thing that they're trying to do. They are trying to help local businesses get bigger and grow and network and help each other out instead of just depending on the big box stores and the big conglomerates. So it's just an awesome thing all the way around. Okay, back to the show. So I know, Patrick, that I want to reiterate, I want to talk about one amendment, and that's the one where you kind of changed my mind, and that was Amendment 5 on the National Guard thing, because I told you my fear was, well, if the governor declares an emergency, and you said, well, he can already do that. So, what's the difference? I just want to.
Yeah,
I made a video and I was like, I'm up in the air about this. Let's just clear the air on this one, and then we can move on to other things.
Sure.
If you want to give your take on it, because I said when I did my video, I was like, I don't know, because the government, or the governor declares an emergency, he's just going to take control of him. And you're like, well, he can already do that. Like, oh.
Well,
good point.
I see it a little differently, and it's just because, I've been, working up in Jeff City for quite a while and kind of see the way things are done, sometimes surreptitiously, sometimes cloak and dagger. And they have to do things like this sometimes for a reason, but pardon me. It does seem to me that Amendment 5 is kind of a way of moving the National Guard away from the Highway Patrol, because the Highway Patrol gets an awful lot of funding from the federal government. That's probably a portion of what this is. Also, there were too many buffers in between the governor and the National Guard. But there was only one buffer between the federal government and the National Guard. There were 2 for the governor, 1 for the federal government. And this basically puts plenty of buffers in between the federal government and the National Guard, and virtually no buffers between the governor and the National Guard. But that bill does offer for Senate oversight. So that makes me feel more comfortable, of course. So, I mean, that's an important one too. So that's kind of where, I was drawing my conclusions from. Now, I hate to say this because I don't vote what other people vote because I hear their opinions, but I am interested in everyone's opinion, and it doesn't matter where the opinion comes from. I'll take it all in. But this was the only one that I think Ron Calzone was in favor of out of all the amendments that are being proposed on the ballot. So, I mean, in my mind, I got to, if Ron says this one's kosher, and the weird part was when we had Tom on the live stream last Saturday night, Tom said the same thing. This was the only one that was actually constitutional out of the amendments. The constitutional amendment that doesn't have a number, that is also constitutional, but is currently not necessarily a really good idea. So at any rate, that's why I decided, and basically, a lot of smart people come on the live stream last Saturday night to talk about all the amendments. You folks who are listening to this on the radio before we vote on November 8th, please look at the Missouri Freedom Initiative on YouTube. And it's from last Saturday, which would be October 30th. That is the one where we had Tom Martz on our show. Also, we had Jesse Rood from Congressional Grassroots Movement. And we also had Robert E. Smith. And so we had Constitution Party, Libertarian Party, and then Tom Martz, I don't think associates necessarily with any party, weighing in on this on the constitutional level. Are these amendments constitutional? It was a very powerful show. Now, the week before that, we went through all the initiatives that were on the ballot, the amendment proposals, from a language point of view, basically what it entails. But this last one we did literally, is it constitutional? Does it jive with the Missouri Constitution? That was interesting. That was actually fascinating. So that's kind of where I came from on 5, because we're moving our National Guard, Missouri's National Guard, and putting more buffers in between the federal government and our National Guard, and that makes me happy. So
yeah,
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I mean, the more I listened, and I was like, okay, yeah, because I would definitely rather have the governor have more say so than the federal government, because that's the way it should have been to begin with, and then they kind of snuck in and took over, just like always. Well, thief in the night come in and take control of something they should have never had control over in the first place. So that's always lovely. Okay, Patrick, I just want to get your opinion on something, because sure. I have found it hilarious that now on Twitter, when the White House posts something about the increase in Social Security, and then it gets fact-checked and they have to delete the tweet. I mean, I am not like an Elon Musk worshiper by any means. I think he does some good things, and then some things I'm like, what are you doing? This has been, if not just the entertainment value alone, this has been a blast to watch, because they're having a meltdown.
They are. And it's a funny thing, too, because I've talked about censorship. You've experienced censorship on YouTube now, and I'll talk more about that later tonight. But the fact is, the White House and Biden has never been censored. Not by the media, not by social media. I mean, they get a free pass on whatever they want to say. Trump didn't get that free pass. He was being censored. So it's interesting. It's just one political party that isn't censored and everyone else is. Sounds a lot like communism to me, honestly. But the funny thing is the tweet itself that was put out by the White House. Now, everyone here is, I'm assuming, over 18 years old. So we can all make an assumption right now, very easily, that Biden doesn't actually tweet. He has a team of people that do that for him. So I think we can probably assume this. Mm-hmm. But the tweet said something to the tune of, I'm paraphrasing, thanks to the Biden administration, the Social Security recipients are receiving the largest increase in the history of the program. Well, thanks to the Biden administration, well, Biden had nothing to do with it. This law was put in place in 1972 by Nixon. for CPI, average adjustment, cost of living increase every single year. This is why we do CPI numbers. It wasn't for people to figure out what inflation is. It's supposedly so the government would know how much to increase entitlements by. So at any rate, it's just weird. Biden's been able to get away with this forever. And I'm not just picking on Biden. I mean, there's a lot of people on the socialist end of the spectrum, the left, that get away with these tweets that never get censored. They can say whatever they want. And my favorite, and I'll get into this in a little bit here because it's actually important, is how everyone in the media and everyone on the left right now keeps complaining about how our democracy is being threatened by the right. We don't have a democracy in the United States of America. We have never had a democracy. That doesn't get fact-checked. But the fact that Biden did get fact-checked by Twitter was actually a glimmer of hope. Everyone out there who's really jaded, and we're about to leave YouTube. Our organization is about to literally sprout our wings and fly away from YouTube. We have presences elsewhere in social media, but we have been censored so hardcore on YouTube, and for the dumbest things, strike after strike after strike, warnings, and then reduce circulation of our videos. And they tell us they're doing it even, all for the dumbest things. So it wouldn't surprise me if Biden, previous to, Elon Musk buying Twitter, and I don't really trust Elon Musk either, to be honest with you, but if Biden had put out a tweet and said, the sun came up today, thanks to the Biden administration, the leadership of the Biden administration encouraged the sun to rise today, that Twitter would just let that go. I mean, that's how stupid it is. And I fact check Biden all the time on Twitter, by the way. So if anyone wants to follow us on Twitter, I mean, I do have a lot of fun going after Biden, and I keep it clean. Mm-hmm. So they have no reason to get, take the stick after me on Twitter or anything like that. But you're right. That was a momentous occasion to see the White House actually get censored on a social media platform. This is a first, so if you will, a new precedent was set today. So does that mean that censorship is gone? No. It means that at least they're equally applying it so far. And the censorship was not over bullcrap. It was actually over a false statement. The Biden administration had nothing to do with the Social Security increase for next year, which I believe is 8.7% increase in Social Security. Biden had nothing to do with it. If anyone wants to, take praise or thanks for it, it should be Richard Nixon. He signed that into law in 1972.
Yeah, it's just, I guess it's the childish part of my brain that gets a real kick out of seeing lefties lose their mind. It's just like, when he's like, oh, you're going to pay $8 a month for that blue check mark. And then, of course, the AOCs of the world get all bent out of shape. But I've noticed that really it's only the people on the left that are upset about that. People on the right don't seem to be like, oh, my God. It's everybody on the left are the complainers. And it's hilarious. And
well, remember now, Trump was a sitting president who was also censored on social media. So Biden doesn't have that singular distinction. He's simply starting to get the same treatment that Trump did.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah,
it's equal application.
Yeah, it's just the thing. The eight. Oh, you're going to pay $8 a month for that blue check mark, and it's like, to me, the blue check mark is meaningless. I know that's supposed to it's verify it's a real person and not a bot or what. I don't care. I don't care if I have a blue check mark next to my name that I'm verified. I just once in a while I'll post something or I'll retweet something or I'll if it's Robert Reich III, then I'll tell him how big of an idiot he is because he always tries to blame inflation on corporate greed instead of government spending. So I have to get on there and go, come on, Robert. You're lying. Just we all know you're lying. Please stop. Which he's not going to because he's got this platform to utter his nonsense from. And I think it's, I was listening to a podcast this morning. I was catching up on all my podcasts, and they were talking about the leak where the DHS and Facebook had a portal for the government to come in on Facebook and censor stuff and fact check it or pull it or whatever. And it's like, well, that's, and one guy's like, when they're talking about COVID, the guy they were interviewing is like, well, he's like, I can understand where the government would have the public health and in their interest to make sure that bad information's not given out. He's like, but they went way too far, and I guess I'm just enough of a pessimist or a cynic to say, in my head, when he's talking, I'm like, I don't think the only reason the public health is in the interest of the government is, I'm sorry, do we need to whittle the population down so it doesn't cost so much for us to finance healthcare? I mean, other than that, and then the other, like the Atlantic and all these people like, oh, we need to forgive and forget all this stuff we did during COVID. No, there is no, I'm not forgetting, and I'm sorry. I know you're supposed to forgive others. I can't forgive that. I cannot forgive breaking people into two classes, and because you got the vaccine, you were the awesome one, and the unvaccinated are awful, terrible people who are going to kill their grandma. I'm not forgetting, and I'm not forgiving, because that was intentional. That wasn't, oh, we just didn't have all the facts. No, you were pushing a narrative. You were pushing guilt and fear onto people, and same with politicians. That is not something that should be forgotten, and that's not something that should be forgiven, especially in state elections around the country November 8th. There should be a whole lot of politicians getting kicked out of office because they wanted to pick essential, non-essential, evil, grandma killing people versus the good people. Though, it's a big clean sweep.
I'll take it a step further, and I'm going to be very careful because I know we're on YouTube right now. But the fact is, they pushed a serum that, at very best, didn't work. But we know the truth of it. That's the best case scenario, is it simply didn't work. The worst case scenario is what we're starting to see right now, and we can't talk about that on YouTube. That's because of censorship. And this is real data that's coming out from Europe. It's coming out from hospitals in California, hospitals in Texas. And I shudder to think what will be coming in the next 2 years because of the serum. This is really, really, really strange stuff, gang. And I just, you're right, John, I'm a Christian, so I'm supposed to forgive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can't forgive what looks like democide or genocide. I can't forgive that. This was, as John said, this was intentional. So, and I think we should leave it there. Maybe I said too much. I don't want to get your YouTube channel in trouble.
Don't worry about it, because I upload a copy to Odyssey, and at some point I'll be, I'll stream to both, and if I get removed from Twitter, then it'll just be Odyssey. I am beyond caring about, oh, they're gonna pull a video. I'm beyond that now, because I'm growing, subscribers, but I am sick and tired of just, oh, I shouldn't say that. I'm just, it drives me insane.
Yeah, you were absolutely correct, because there are things having to do with the beer flu, the serum, having to do with global warming, even lasting ramifications of 9/11 that we simply can't talk about on YouTube. They will give your channel a strike if you talk about these things. Other than if you carry the government line, if you carry the water for the federal government and their official narratives, then you're okay. Mm-hmm. If you deviate from that and bring in facts from other sources, that's where they start shutting you down. And it's happened to me plenty of times.
Yeah,
it's not just once. And
I understand that. I mean, I understand, and I would not tell you, whoa, Patrick, come on, man, because that's you and your organization built something for a long time, and I understand the hesitancy there, and I will not denigrate you for that. It's just I guess I'm getting older and I'm getting crabbier now, or my
Yep.
tolerance for stupid has like really dwindled.
You know what? We shouldn't have a tolerance for totalitarianism and for censorship, though.
Right.
This is America, for God's sake. So you were right, John. I mean, the fact that I've been hesitant to leave YouTube, I know in retrospect, a year ago, I was stupid. I should have left YouTube a year ago. There's important things that need to be discussed that affect the state of Missouri that have to do with the beer flu and the serum. I've gotten strike after strike on YouTube for bringing up facts, and I don't forgive that. I'm literally, and there is YouTube asking for an apology? No, they censored me just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I'm tired of it.
Yeah. I
Not
mean,
to put too fine a point on it.
the work that you guys have done, the important things that you've gotten done, and the information that you're bringing out, it's nothing. There's no dark agenda behind it. I mean, if getting people more freedom, keeping more of their money, making more choices is evil, and that's not a world I want to be a part of. That's not a society that I want to be a part of. Something like that where, it's like there's some bureaucrat hiding behind every bush waiting for you to say something and be like, and come out and beat you with a censorship stick because you went against the narrative or the agenda. And that's just, and this is something that I say a lot, and I am cynical, I know, and I am kind of a pessimist at times. But right now, and Odyssey and Rumble and some of these other channels are a prime example of when people finally have enough, someone will create something new for people to migrate to. And they'll just say, we're not doing what those guys did. So if you want to cut out all the nonsense and not be fact-checked and have your stuff pulled, I mean, you're going to do something really bad on Odyssey or something to get videos yanked. But just talking about COVID, they're not going to, like, lock up the brakes and go, well, that's enough of that. But, all right, I got to take a break here. So for those of you in the KEYK audience, thanks so much for joining me this week for another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. And again, make sure you check out slaphappybeverage.com for your Delta 8 infused limoncello. So the mellow cello from slaphappybeverage.com. Next week, folks, I may be taking a break. I haven't made up my mind, or I may be coming on just to talk about election results and the all that happy noise. So we'll see. I may be here next week, maybe not. But happy weekend to all of you. I just fudged that all up. But anyway, here's something else. Well, let's just stay on topic here, because we're seeing. I think it's beautiful, and this is what happens when, even though we're not really as free as we should be, we still have enough freedoms for people to create a different avenue for us to go down. Whether it's, a video platform, a social media platform, a product, whatever. This is a great thing about America and ingenuity. Before it all gets regulated away, there are always people. Now, they might have a slightly or a majorly different political stance than we do, but they're just keen enough to go, I don't like this, the way this is heading, and they decide they want to create a workaround. That, until you live in a very socialist or communist society, those things will continue to happen. And that is our escape. That's our the one thing that we can hold on to that a lot of other countries can't. Their people are just not allowed that, to create a loophole or a workaround for some government stupidity, to create something new for maybe it's just 10% of the population that says, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. This makes me uncomfortable. And somebody's like, well, here's a platform where you can discuss all these things and not be smashed with the censor hammer.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing right now. And I've been trying to talk, because again, I'm pessimistic and I'm kind of cynical, but there is that point that We can't be so pessimistic that we don't see other opportunities out there. Somebody has created something, and some people are like, well, it's not as good as this. Give it time. You can't just, Facebook, YouTube, none of these were just this huge all at one time. It takes a while to build. Be patient, back them up. Let's see what they can do. And Odyssey is a good example of that.
Yep. And so is Rumble right now.
Yes.
Rumble, and by the way, I'm going to get speculative because right now Rumble is a great platform, and I mean great. And it's got a lot of folks there too. But they do have now, it's a public company, they do have shareholders. Mm-hmm. And that worries me if the shareholders or the majority shareholders decide, well, we shouldn't be talking about 9/11 on Rumble. That's when you head for the hills. You go to the next free platform. But you're right. Odyssey is where we're moving. That'll be our primary, but I want to do Rumble too. So we're probably going to do both at the same time. But the censorship is literally, it's gotten to my soul as well. I can't deal with it anymore. I have tried super hard, and the fact is we can't tell the truth about certain things anymore because it's against the narrative. And YouTube is fighting for the narrative. Now let's go through, the lineage, if you will, of YouTube. This is important, for people to understand. YouTube used to be its own company, and it got bought out by Google. Google is owned by Alphabet Inc. Alphabet Inc. is a CIA creation with, a lot of NSA, characters and players in it. So essentially, YouTube is a mouthpiece of the government. If you want evidence of this, look at the censorship that they do. Literally, they take their marching orders from the World Health Organization. They take their marching orders from the United States government. I mean, this is fascism, folks. Everyone thinks of YouTube as actually being, a company itself, not just a platform, but a company. No, it's owned by Google. And everyone thinks of Google being a company. Well, it is. It's the company, all right. It's the company, the CIA. The CIA actually lent the money to two gentlemen in college who were recruited by the CIA to actually create a search engine platform for the internet with the understanding that it's going to be collecting data on people's searches. That's how Google started, friends. CIA seed money. And by the way, you can Google it if you will. I'm doing air quotes right now. This is radio, so I have to tell you I'm doing air quotes. You can Google it. You can actually look up how Google was started. And the two gentlemen that started Google were recruited by the CIA and given money by the CIA to use their talent to create what is we now call Google. And they own YouTube. This is why the censorship is there. Facebook, well, let's go in. This is going to get into speculation because I can't prove it. So, and once again, we're talking about censorship. Why do we have censorship and who are the players? So Facebook is Mark Zuckerberg's creation. Well, not really. It's actually created by 2 or 3 other guys he went to college with, and he was a part of it. But the thing is this is the speculation now. Mark Zuckerberg didn't exist until he was about 19 years old. Before he was 19, his name was Jacob Greenberg. And I think Jacob Greenberg is the grandchild to David Rockefeller. So Greenberg is Rockefeller's daughter's name. That's her married name is Greenberg. So at any rate, so you have David Rockefeller, which is oil and pharmaceutical companies. And that's what he represented, the Rockefeller Group. So, once again, these ties keep going back to the government. They keep going back to large corporations. Look what Facebook has done for Facebook is without a doubt the biggest censorship platform we've ever seen before in the United States. Now, YouTube is not far behind, but Facebook is far, far worse. Anything having to do with the beer flu and the serum got immediately censored over there. So YouTube is close second, but I'm happy to report that I've enjoyed a few short vacations on Twitter. They were 12-hour vacations. A couple of them were 3-day vacations on Twitter. But I found that, and by the way, I'm not being given vacations because I'm a bad person. It's because of some of the information that I provide. And it's the same thing with Google. It's the same thing with Facebook. There's certain types of information that is against their interest to get out. In the case of Facebook, remember now, Zuckerberg comes from pharmaceutical money. So under that scenario I gave you. So, basically he's tied into big pharma. Well, so are the news media companies. For instance, NBC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, CSNBC, all of these guys. Who is their biggest advertiser? Pharmaceuticals. This is why they don't say anything bad, or I don't want to say bad. They don't give the truth about, for instance, the Pfizer serum, the Moderna serum. You don't get that, from these platforms, from these agencies. And that's directly the reason why. It's against their financial interests. And it's all about money, gang. It doesn't matter if we're killing off populations around the planet. As long as people can make money doing it, it will be protected by pharmaceutical companies. So they're very powerful.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too. Let's say that because they drove or they had Zuckerberg in there for hearings and all that stuff, and yeah, he creates a portal for government agencies like DHS and all that to come in and censor information. But this was also a message to folks that said, "Oh, if you don't want to go along with the agenda here, then we'll just drag you in front of all the media cameras and we'll drag you through the mud and we'll basically destroy you, or we'll fine you so much we'll bankrupt you." So not only did they do it this way, where government funded operations to create these search engines or social media companies or whatever, but there are going to be some out there that this is a campaign of fear. You either go along or we'll do everything in our power to make you cease to exist. They are so hell-bent on controlling everything that they accomplished missions twofold. And I understand. I mean, listen, I don't like a censorship, and I don't like that what happened during the whole COVID thing, the extent that it went to. I don't like all of that. I understand owning a company and having 17 alphabet agencies staring at you saying, you either go along or we'll ruin you. We'll literally ruin you. Because since the media is in the pocket of the government, they're going to happily play whatever song the government tells them to. And they are going to do everything in their power. It'll be 24/7 scrolling across the bottom and just after every break, they come back and they just rehash and rehash and rehash and just drive it into everybody's head how evil this company is. So that's the other issue, is that because of licensure, because of regulation, because of the size and scope of the federal government, they can, if they decide to, if they choose to pick someone out of the crowd who they don't like because maybe their political leanings or their opinions are too different. If they get angry enough, if they want to set an example, they will pick somebody out and just run them into the ruins. And this, when you have that at that end of the spectrum, and then the same group of jerks love to campaign on the fact that they are all about small businesses and the middle class. Well, if I'm middle class and I'm and I'm thinking about starting a small business and I see this going on, that makes people, and especially if you live in a state like Illinois, California, New York, I mean, that's just a whole lot of fiery hoops to jump through in order just to get a business. And then if you say the wrong thing, you don't address somebody by the right pronoun, and all these other things, you got 27,000 agencies kicking in your door, angry. We're going to take your business away.
Yep.
It's maddening. It's irritating to sit here and listen to these tools talk about how they're so pro business. But then you turn around and look at how they treat businesses, and it's like anybody with more than two brain cells to rub together should be able to see that as these people do not care about your business, and they don't care about you. They care about one thing, and that's their power. That's it. And
Yep.
if I had it my way in this state, yeah, let's say that I would run for office like state rep and would win. I tell you one thing that would be in my platform, and that is to go through and to eliminate some of the stupid licenses, cutting hair, things like that. Have to have a license, have to spend $13,000 on school. I would do everything in my power to eliminate a whole lot of that. Because if you do that, A, you save that person trying to get into that career a lot of money. But B, you're not under so much government scrutiny. You're able to operate at a more free level, and then we just build upon that. That would be
Sure.
that'd be one of my pet projects right there, licensure.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. I'm glad you picked that because that's something I've thought about quite a bit over the last 30 years. And the government actually having a part of licensing, basically a profession, literally destroys what we call the free market. So I want to talk about that for a second, if you don't mind, John, because that affects Missouri too.
Yeah, go right ahead, man.
Okay. And so capitalism. Okay. If you talk to your average socialist right now, socialist, Democrat, leftist, whatever, they'll say capitalism has failed. And I'll say, provide an example, if you don't mind. Well, look around you. I mean, the whole system has failed. Well, this isn't capitalism. This is fascism. What we have right now is mercantilism. We haven't had free markets in a long time. And it's because of licensure. You've just been talking about it. That's a big part of it. It's because the Federal Reserve can create currency anytime they want that kills markets. It's because, basically we allow lobbyists in Washington, D.C. I don't know how much lobbyist activity there is actually in Jeff City. There is some, but I mean, you can't compete with the level of the federal government. I imagine a lobbyist in Jefferson City might pass an envelope with $3,000, $4,000 in it. I think lobbyists up in D.C. are passing envelopes with, like $1 million in it. So it's at a very different level in D.C. But the fact is, we do not have free markets. The reason being is because governments favor certain industries over other industries. And within those industries, they favor certain businesses over other businesses. Case in point, let's talk about the beer flu again for a second. When there were national shutdowns, well, I hate to say a national shutdown because we didn't actually have shutdowns here in Missouri technically. Well, certainly not state-induced. There might have been county or city-induced shutdowns, but not a statewide one. There were businesses that were allowed to stay open and other businesses were forced to close. Now, I'm talking about Springfield. I live near Springfield, Missouri, so I'm going to keep my focus there. Mom and pop restaurants were forced to close by the city of Springfield. But, McDonald's was allowed to stay open. Well, who owns McDonald's? Who's on the board of McDonald's? Bill Gates. Bill Gates. Isn't he the same guy providing the serum or at least, somehow directing the development of serums with certain corporations? Well, yes, he is. But he also, is on the board of McDonald's and owns an awful lot of their stock. So, it's follow the money. I mean, it's always been that way. Whether it's a pandemic or a nuclear war, gang, follow the money. You'll be able to figure things out pretty quick. But it's literally about making sure that those at the top stay at the top. And as long as we can continue to print out currency, we'll make sure that those people at the top actually have access to that currency before anyone else, before it actually starts inflating, the currency supply to the point where we have inflation. This is the way it works. We don't have free markets anymore. On certain levels, we do. Like, it might be, small businesses all over your town that do the same thing. Like in IT, I'm an IT contractor. And so I do IT work and I compete with other IT companies. Now, there's not a whole lot of, I would say, manipulation of that particular market. But once you get into stuff like heating and air conditioning and, electricians, I believe it starts getting manipulated on that level. Because there's grants and subsidies going into all kinds of businesses. There really isn't in the IT industry. But at the same time, I'm proud to say that I have never, ever taken any money from the federal government, ever. So I'm proud of that. I mean, I can say that, and I don't owe the government anything. They keep taking money from me, but I don't take anything from them. And I know that a lot of people would say, well, it's your money. You should be able to take some back. Well, the thing is I feel like if I take some of it back, that they somehow, have power over me. So I leave it alone that way. But you're exactly right. Licensing for businesses. You just go back 200 years ago. You didn't have to have a license to practice medicine. You didn't. It's certainly haircuts. That's relatively new. To actually be certified to cut hair is about a 30, 40-year-old practice. Before then, you didn't need it at all. And the list goes on and on. Licensed to be an electrician, licensed to be a plumber. My gosh, guys, I work with city and county offices, and there's ordinances in these cities, and they want, basically, and I shouldn't say a whole lot about this because, people know me, but there's a lot of cities that have ordinances that say you got to have a building inspector come out and inspect your electrical work before we'll sign off on it. Before you can continue your work, constructing this new building or this home or what have you. And in large part, these people that go out and inspect don't even know what they're looking at. And I know this because I'm an IT guy that works with government, and I have to work with these folks. And they don't know what they're looking at generally, and they certainly can't tell whether or not it's safe or whether or not it was done correctly. They don't even know. But they charge you a fee. And then the guy who came out and did the wiring in the first place also has to be licensed by the government. I mean, have a certificate saying that he's certified in this or that or the other thing. So it's just weird. We think about this as well, that just increases our credentials and therefore, basically gives validity to, the trade that we do. But it technically actually doesn't. All it is a piece of paper. So this is why I'm a big advocate of kids, I say kids a lot, young adults considering a trade school rather than going to a fully accredited college. Learn a trade. Don't spend money on the college deal. I mean, shoot. I mean, most people can't afford it anyway. You'll never make your money back. It'll take too long to make your money back. And then you'll have a mortgage, basically the equivalent of a mortgage when you're 22 years old and you've got your bachelor's degree in something, your bachelor's in business, which is popular. So no, free markets simply don't thrive in our current environment because government is too busy picking the winners and losers. We do not have capitalism in the United States of America. We have what's called crony capitalism. Mercantilism, fascism, pick your word. That's what we have in America. It's very unfortunate, but it's true. But I will say, none of this could exist if we didn't have a central bank that could just print up currency willy-nilly every time the government sent them a bond.
Yeah. Licensure is one of those things that really gets my goat. It really irritates me because literally they're making something illegal until you pay them money, and then they say now it's legal. So they're making all these different career choices or career paths or different type of businesses illegal until you pay them an extortion fee, and then they give you a little piece of paper. Now it's legal. It's all arbitrary.
Well, no, it's not just arbitrary. It's deeper. It's darker than that, John. Let me explain. People talk about marijuana being a gateway drug to other drugs. You want to know what the gateway drug is? It's licensure. because what it does is it's a gateway into regulation of an entire industry. Once again, this is fascism. This is mercantilism. That's the real gateway drug, because government can't get enough. They control, an entire industry. They start controlling the way you do business, how you conduct business, who you can conduct business with. The 14th Amendment, the right of association. Pardon me, I'm sorry. This is how we literally, like, for instance, people in Missouri, important people like Ron Calzone, were fighting social distancing. We're fighting, basically all these weird regulations that came out with the beer flu. Was the right of association. We have the right to associate with whoever we want, and then they have the right to associate with us. And of course, the reverse of that is they may choose not to associate with us, but that is their choice. If you and I choose to associate, the government shouldn't regulate how we associate. They can't regulate that we wear masks when we associate. They cannot regulate that we're 6 feet apart. It's really hard to shake someone's hand when you guys are 6 feet apart, by the way. There's a little bit of lower back bending for that one. But you see my point. Case in point is the regulation on even the right of association is what the government tried to do. This literally leads to, I can go into the psychology of it, and I've talked extensively to my daughter, who's a psychologist, about what this does. But the psychology of it is literally not to trust other people. That's what the government was looking for. Masking people, keeping them 6 feet apart, and then making them think they're going to kill you because they may not be vaccinated, they may not be serumized, or they may be carrying something in their body that you will carry home and kill your grandmother with. It's fear. They were planting seeds of fear in every single person, and the only solution to that fear was more regulation from the federal government. That's the gateway drug, licensure.
Yeah, and I saw people equating the social distancing to prison lines because, in your prison, you go, stay so many feet apart from the guy in front of you and the guy behind you, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And,
that's correct.
Yeah, and you know what? Let's just be honest here. They did make people into prisoners. Some of these states made people prisoners of their own homes.
Yes, they did.
And this, again, going back to, let's forgive and forget. No. Especially at this juncture of elections. If I'm living in St. Louis County, I'm doing everything in my power to get rid of Sam Page. Because he basically legislated from his position, and it is not his duty. Now, the county board legislates, he is supposed to enforce it. And he went against the board. Now, they were talking about taking him to court and all these other things, and I guess it didn't happen. But you want an example of someone who should never see a political office again, and it's little dictator Sam Page. Little Hitler should be shown the door and be like, we don't ever want to see your ugly mug again.
Well, possibly prosecuted too, because he's violated people's God-given rights. This is literally the crux of the matter, if you ask me. And it doesn't matter, basically what level you want to take it to. First Amendment, censorship. Our First Amendment rights were taken away because we were spreading false information by saying that face diapers didn't work, social distancing didn't work, and that there is something horribly, horribly wrong with an mRNA serum that was developed in 8 months. And we were censored. It turns out we were right on every bit of it. The psychological damage to children alone. Once again, this is why we need to talk about this. In Missouri, we need to treat these kids that have been affected by these horrible, horrible methods devised by Fauci and others to face diaper, social distance, and be afraid of everyone because they could be carrying a bug that you could take home and kill your grandma with. the psychological damage is severe. We cannot forgive and forget. We must prosecute. We must prosecute. In fact, it's an imperative if we are to remain, a viable culture that acknowledges natural or God-given rights. We must prosecute. So I'm with you on that, John. I agree. And Sam Page is among some of the people that are on the top of my list that should be prosecuted.
Now, I saw a Twitter post today from an attorney who was said he had a court case for workman's comp against an employer from the vaccine mandate, and he said the judge agreed there was enough evidence to proceed, and his statement was, you may not be able to sue Pfizer, but you can sure as heck go after your employers. Now, if this guy sets a precedent, this is something really big. But the problem is, what I would like to see is if a bunch of employers get hit with this, even though they shouldn't have mandated it in the first place. If they start getting hit with these lawsuits and people start winning, if I'm all these companies, do you all gather together and say, all right, now we're going to sue the federal government, or we're going to sue the vaccine manufacturers because they made this faulty product that we mandated? I mean, I don't know where it goes from here, but this guy could be setting a precedent.
Actually, my vision's much bigger than this. I understand what he's doing, but we have to go after the mainstream media.
Yeah.
They were funded by the pharmaceutical companies. It's when the Pfizer drops came out that we found out that there was fraud involved with the serum. Enormous fraud. They lied to Congress. They lied to the FDA. And so there's now fraud, malfeasance. And so it's demonstrable even. Constant authoritative denial of the truth by the media after the Pfizer drops came out. It's time to go after the mainstream media. They are the purveyors of misinformation. They sold a product that was defective. And even after they found out the truth through the Pfizer drops, they continued to sell the defective product. In fact, I believe we should be able to sue the President of the United States because Biden continued to sell the product after it was determined it was the defective product. And the harm that was done to the people of the world who had to partake in the serum is demonstrable as well. We'll see this in large form, I believe. We're already seeing it right now. I don't want to talk about this too much because it is YouTube, but there was recently an exposed email that was given to a whistleblower from I'm just going to say a hospital in California. Whereas that hospital in California, pre-serum, had a stillbirth rate of about 2 per month. 2 stillbirths per month in that hospital on average over a long period of time. Since the serum came out, it's gone to 31 stillbirths per month in that hospital. And the only thing that's changed is the serum. So, and that this is yet another example. Let's not even talk about myocarditis. Let's not talk about strokes or heart attacks.
Blood clots.
Because we're being conditioned that that's a normal thing in kids now. It never was a normal thing. I was a kid once too. I'm 51, but I'm still young enough to remember I didn't lose any friends to heart attacks or strokes or blood clots when I was a kid. I had one friend that died that was hit by a car. That's it. And I had lots of schoolmates, lots of friends. I was very social. So I was out and about. I knew a lot of folks, a lot of other kids. So, but it wasn't normal to hear of people dropping in the middle of a sports field playing soccer. How many of them have we had in the last 2 years? It's just, and it's supposed to be normal. Well, it's global warming, it's gardening. I love that one, gardening.
Gaming.
They come up with every Yeah, that's
Literally
right. Gaming.
video games.
Yep, video gaming, sleeping with the television on was one that was suggested, once again by NBC, or a doctor that reported on NBC. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's everything but the serum. And I hope we don't get your YouTube channel in trouble by talking about this stuff, John, but this stuff affects Missouri as well. And we have to be able to discuss this stuff in Missouri because we couldn't have, John, you remember how we really wanted Susie's bill to go through, HB 2009, Parents'
Yes.
Choice on Vaccination. Okay. This was an important bill to the state of Missouri, but we couldn't really talk about why on YouTube because of the censorship. And so we couldn't really talk about how important that bill was. And we put up with the censorship, you know, and we're done. We're going into a new legislative year and we're going to have bills that are going to touch on, you know, global warming or the beer flu or the vaccine or 9/11 or, you know, some other thing, you know, and we're going to need to discuss it. And YouTube just won't let us do it. So, you know, and the Missouri Freedom Initiative is unfortunately going to have to leave YouTube. And our first premiere live stream on Odyssey will be on election night. We'll be holding an election night special. So, you know, we'll be doing that. We will have our live stream on YouTube tomorrow, but it is our planned final live stream on YouTube. So unless something goes horribly wrong on Tuesday, but, you know, if all things go to plan, it'll be on Odyssey. But, and I don't mean to harp on and on about censorship, but it's incredibly important that people understand that states, legislatures deal with stuff that can't be talked about, even in mainstream media or even on social media because of censorship. And we deal with states' legislature. We are not gun-toting, threaten to shoot up the school people. We are not that. We literally are people that deal with legislation. That's what our organization does. We deal with legislators. We try to get Missouri, you know, as free as possible. And I'd love to talk about that for another, you know, in a little bit here too, because and I'm going to say something shocking for you real quick, is that I believe the New Hampshire Free State Project is probably a stalemate at best and it's failed at worst. So I think, you know, we might be taking the lead as far as gaining freedoms, as far as, you know, any other states are concerned. But I'll get to that in a little bit. Let me talk about one more thing as we're talking about censorship. I'm going to tell you a story here real quick. And this is about a little dog. And the dog's name is Bruce. And Bruce was diagnosed with heartworm in June. And this is a true story, by the way. And so at any rate, the people who own Bruce, which happen to be my wife and I, were in the middle of going to and from Minnesota and didn't have time to deal with the quote-unquote heartworm protocol that the vet was recommending, which is really dangerous for a dog, by the way. It's kind of like chemotherapy. And we found he had the heartworm before we got him. So this isn't something that happened while he was with us. So, but it was a raging case of heartworm. And if anyone knows anything about dogs, you know, that's kind of like getting a cancer diagnosis. And that's a pretty bad one when you find out your dog has advanced heartworm. So at any rate, since we didn't have time to do the protocols because we kept going back and forth to Minnesota all summer long dealing with an estate, we decided to take matters into our own hands and actually start looking online about treatments, online, you know, just any natural treatments that you can, to buy us 2 months, because it would be 2 months, we'd be done with our stuff in Minnesota and we'd be traveling anymore and we could start the protocol. And so at any rate, we looked into that and then we started working, you know, basically some interesting stuff. Now I can talk about this because YouTube doesn't censor this information. This will not get censored. This will not get anyone in trouble. Number one, you can give your dog to garlic. And even though your vet will say no, you can. And you can give your dog actually a lot of garlic. Bruce is alive today, and he's had a lot of garlic. Number two, there is a natural protocol for dealing with heartworm where you don't have to go through chemo. And it's actually just herbal. And so it's wormwood, and it's black walnut, And then if anyone has any questions, just comment down below. And if I don't see it, John will see it, and I'll get back to you on this. But also carrots, and then of course garlic, and then coconut oil. Now you do these things in different ways and everything, but they're all natural. You can get everything quite easily in your local town. If you're not familiar with black walnuts or white willow bark. Or I'm sorry, it's not white willow bark. It's wormwood. Wormwood. I'm sorry, it's an herb. You just mix it into their food. And so we just took Bruce into the vet yesterday, and his heartworm is significantly reduced, almost to the point where it's not detectable. And so at any rate, but they did say that we were, quote unquote, playing with our dog's life by doing it naturally and not going through the vet and going through the chemotherapy protocol. I call it chemotherapy, by the way. They don't call it that, but I do, because it's actually virtually the same thing. And it's so deadly, in fact, you do have to sign a form, letting them know that your dog may pass away during the treatment that you would do with the vet. Now, we've had no problems with Bruce. He didn't even have symptoms of heartworm, despite how advanced it was. He had no shortness of breath. He wasn't lethargic. He wasn't tired all the time. Nothing like that at all. And no loss of appetite. And the guy, Bruce eats a lot. But we can talk about that on YouTube. Okay? You know what we can't talk about on YouTube? Vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc for humans, and what that may or may not do for someone who has the beer flu. It's written right into the agreement, the user agreement with YouTube. No, if you don't believe me, look it up. I can tell you all day long how to cure something, a terminal disease in a dog. I can talk about that all day long on YouTube. But if you have the beer flu, you have to go with the WHO protocol on YouTube. That's it. Just like at the vet, they want you to go through the chemotherapy, that $1,000 option that may kill your dog versus the $40 option that won't kill your dog. And also, the one that might kill your dog involves your dog spending a lot of time at the vet, because your dog has to be kenneled for about, I can't remember, 6 weeks. And there's a reason for that, is because when the worms get killed and they get dislodged from the heart, if the dog is exerting physical activity, they might have a blood clot and just drop dead. And that's why that protocol is so dangerous as opposed to the one we're doing. The one we're doing doesn't carry that risk. So if you guys are reading between the lines, I have just given you an example of something we can talk about on YouTube versus something we can't talk about on YouTube. The difference here is one involves a human life. The other one involves a dog's life. And there's a little bit of difference in value here. Not that I want to get into gradient values of life, but
and money.
And money. Oh yeah, money's part of it too. But money's a funny thing, because I hear it misquoted all the time. Money's the root of all evil. It's not money. Money's a tool.
The love.
Just like a gun is a tool. Yeah. It's the love of money. That's right. 2 Timothy, the love of money is the root of all evil. And that's what we're dealing with here. We're at the end of the Keynesian economic cycle. And once again, let me finish up with what I said before here real quick. If anyone didn't understand what I was talking about, because I have to be careful because it's YouTube, vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc are really good supplements for humans to take for certain things. You don't necessarily have to get a serum. That's all I'm saying. And I can't talk about that on YouTube, but I can tell you all day long how I cured heartworm in my dog. You guys can find this on YouTube all over the place. How people are curing heartworm with their dogs and escaping the chemotherapy protocol that may kill them just by literally spending $40 on certain herbs. Okay? So, okay.
Yeah.
Now I got that out of the way.
It's one of those things. we talk about the money side of it, and you're talking about animals, dogs versus humans, but it's plain to see for a lot of us the devaluation of human life.
Correct.
And not just devaluation of human life, but also that they are fine, just absolutely fine with causing increased rates of depression that may or may not lead to suicide or may
Right.
or may not lead to overdose, but abusing drugs and alcohol, all these things. And what you touched on earlier, the developmental detriment to little kids who can't see emotion on human faces, which now guess who gets put on the hook for that? Because the schools are going to get saddled with having to hire more of these therapists to get these kids to where they're supposed to be. And guess who's going to be on the hook for that? The taxpayers are going to be. Not
Yep.
Fauci, not the CDC, not the pharmaceutical companies, not these totalitarian little dictators and state, county, city governments. The taxpayers are going to get saddled with all that debt so kids can be somewhat normal in their interaction with other human beings because a very powerful group of people decided they wanted to screw over humanity. And we
Yep.
are going to be left with the bill. That
Right.
again, that's just adding insult to injury because not only did they do all these things to adults, but they took away childhood. They took away a very important developmental thing from kids, seeing emotion, seeing people's lips move as they form words. And I'm sorry, for I still go places and see adults having kids 5 and 6 years old with masks on, and it takes every ounce of my energy not to walk over to them and say, "Do you realize you're committing child abuse? And do you realize that you're probably developmentally stunting your kid by doing this?" And I don't because in the grand scheme of things, it's none of my business. But those same people down the road are going to be boo-hooing and crying about something with their children,
Mhm.
and it stems from their behavior and buying into the fear porn.
Yep.
And it's just like, God, you see it. And as a parent, I mean, my kids are grown. They're both out of the house now. But at the time this was in full tilt, my son still lived here at home. And where he worked, he had to wear a mask, and it just drove him nuts. And the whole thing, the way it was being handled, drove him nuts. And my daughter too. They were both like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." And we had family members who were like, "Hey, how come you guys ain't got? Did you get your vaccine? You get your vaccine?" And my wife and myself and my kids were like, "No, why not? We don't need it. You didn't need it." And to go back to your vitamin D, vitamin C, and zinc, when I had it and I saw a nurse practitioner, I thought I had strep throat, and I went in there because I had a sore throat, a very mild fever, and that was and my voice was shot. That was it. I went in and I'm like, I got strep. And of course, the first thing they did is swab my nose, like, "Oh, you got COVID." And so I'm sitting there, and I said, "So, and now what?" She's like, "Well, I can prescribe you a steroid." She's like, "Are you having problems breathing?" I said, "No, I just have a sore throat, a mild fever, and my voice is shot. That's all I got." "Well, I'll go ahead and write this prescription in case you do develop breathing problems." And I was like, I'm not going to take your steroid, lady, but whatever. Write your little name on a piece of paper. Good for you. And so I said, "So vitamin Z or vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc." And she's like, "Yeah, that won't do anything." And
Mm-hmm.
it took every ounce, it just took every bit of restraint that I had not to pimp slap her. Because my friend who had it a month before me, his doctor, now this was in Jeff City, or I'm in Owensville, his doctor's like, I want you to take so many milligrams of this. I want you to take so many IUs of vitamin D. I want you to take this dose of zinc, drink a boatload of water. This will help you get through.
Mm-hmm.
And then you come down here, and vitamin C and vitamin D and zinc won't do you any good. And I thought, are you sure that you don't have the wrong license? Because any doctor to me that says, well, vitamin D and vitamin C and zinc just aren't going to cut it, it makes me wonder what planet you're actually from, because those are necessary no matter if we're talking about COVID or anything else. Those are minerals and vitamins that you need. So
Yep, for your immune system. Yep,
yeah,
that's
and
right. And along with chaga
oh,
mushroom, by the way, I also
yes.
took chaga mushroom. So,
Now do you okay? And my son is really big on or was it ashwagandha root? He swears up and
yep.
down ashwagandha root is like the bomb. But it just and now and here's the other thing, Patrick, and this has nothing to do with COVID. It does. Going into doctor's offices now, the way patients are treated, I hear story after story after story after story. It's like if it's not COVID related, it's like they almost just don't take interest.
Yep.
I went in for my shoulder. My shoulder was killing me. And all he wanted to do was write me a script for 6 days worth of steroids. And if that didn't make me feel better, then come back and we'll do an x-ray. Both shoulders have been operated on once already. The first thing they did was, let's do an x-ray. We'll just do some. I didn't take the steroids. I'm like, that literally, yes, it'll take the inflammation down. Maybe. But I didn't want the side effects. And I just thought, I'm so. That's what my wife said. Ever since COVID, healthcare, just at your doctor's office. Now, I'm not saying this about all of them, but a lot of them, it's just gone to crap. It's gone completely. They not only did COVID ruin livelihoods. Now, I'm not saying our healthcare was top notch to begin with, but our healthcare system has degraded tremendously since COVID started. And I have family members with a kidney disease and all this stuff, and they go in and they're just like, man, they just seem disinterested. And it's like, what is going on? You guys still took the Hippocratic Oath, right? Did that get discarded when COVID hit? You just, well, I guess it kind of did. Do no harm.
Well,
so I guess it kind of did get tossed out, but come on.
Well, these protocols, are going away because we're supposed to forgive and forget now, right? Except if you go to a hospital. You still have to wear a mask if you go into a hospital.
Yeah, that's true.
If you want to work at a hospital, you still have to take the serum that is demonstrably not working, and at best, demonstrably not working. At worst, it's a whole lot different. They've said there's emails circulating in these hospitals. These people know what's going on, but for some reason, they don't want to talk about it. And once again, this is, okay, I'm talking about stillbirths in California. That's nothing compared to the other stuff that's going on with people simply dropping dead. It's happening. And by the way, I was canceled off of Discord for, putting the Pfizer drops in our Discord server. The truth, once again, this is just constant authoritative denial of the truth is what it is. And it continues to this day. And for people to say, those conspiracy theorists, they were right, but they're still very, very dangerous people. Don't listen to them. And by the way, everyone needs to forgive and forget those who are pushing the government narrative. And that's essentially the message we're getting today. And, first of all, being called a conspiracy theorist is almost becoming a badge of honor because they have it right. The conspiracy theorists are almost always right. Guess who's not almost always right? The government. They're almost always wrong on everything. And in fact, here's another thing unrelated. It does sound like right after the election, we'll be getting the real truth about economic numbers. That's actually being floated out in the press right now. That some of the numbers may have been, quote unquote, slightly manipulated. I'm doing air quotes again, to enhance the Democrats' chances in the next election. And that's the election coming up on Tuesday, of course. This is clown world. Nothing makes sense anymore. I remember when I was a kid, and I used to think how smart adults were. How they could actually solve problems and do complicated things, and they could negotiate, peace agreements and treaties, and they conducted themselves with honor. But that's when I was a kid. I don't see that anymore. I mean, it's just gone. And there's not enough good people, like, for instance, in Washington, D.C., to clear this problem up. I wrote an article about this recently and ended up in a newsletter, the Prepared Homestead newsletter. And I talked a little bit about the voting system and voting for the lesser of two evils. And, it's time for us to literally start voting for not evil. There's a lot of valid candidates out there in other parties. But, even I saw it on Twitter. It's on Twitter. It's either everyone vote all blue or everyone vote all red. It's just my team or your team. How about voting for people? How about actually voting for people instead of voting for a party? It's because I hate to say this, but both parties have failed us in many, many ways. And once again, it's quite demonstrable. For instance, censorship. I challenge anybody to tell me anyone in D.C. that's dealt with censorship, because I already know the answer. They haven't. You know who is doing something about censorship right now? Is actually our Attorney General, Eric Schmidt. He's actually he's deposed Fauci, Jan Psaki, and a whole cast of characters in D.C. right now for actually promoting censorship in social media over the beer flu and the serum. Our Attorney General in Missouri is doing something that no one in D.C. would do. Trump wouldn't even do. It's just weird. Of course, Biden won't do it either. But vote for people, not parties, guys. And this is my advice to you. In many cases, like, for instance, you've had Robert Smith on your show before. You've had Catherine Dreher. These are two fine individuals. And John, I know you know them personally. I know them personally as well. They're good people. And they mean what they say. They're constitutional as well. They're 100% constitutional. And I challenge anybody to actually talk to, anyone who's in the Libertarian Party today and ask them their opinions and their stances on certain things. I think you'd be pleasantly surprised how much you agree with them. And you'll find out the Republicans will give you the same line, but they won't act on it. These are the people that shut down the country, shut down the world. Republicans and Democrats alike did it. So I'm not talking about Missouri specifically. I'm talking about D.C. Because in Missouri, we did not do a state shutdown, as everyone knows who lives in Missouri. But there were cities and counties that did. So, and it was their choice. The governor says, I'm not shutting anything down, but if cities and counties feel the need to shut down, it's up to their government. He shouldn't have said that. He should have said that there will be no shutdowns in the state of Missouri, period. But he gave into it, and once again, we found out that there was pharmaceutical money in his campaign, but that's with a lot of Republicans in Missouri. So back, and I hate to use Jan Psaki's line. We've got to circle back here to what you talked about originally. Those who were in office that literally encouraged mask wearing, social distancing, lockdowns, or serums, those who recommended that stuff or were sympathetic to it or allowed it to happen on their watch, they need to leave office. We don't need them in the state of Missouri. We certainly don't need them in D.C., but we're not going to be able to affect change there. I agree with what you said, John. That's a very good point. We don't need these people in office anymore. They have proven that they are going to literally put the pharmaceutical companies before the natural God-given rights of the people. I'm sorry, I went off on a rant, but I think you know what I was saying, though.
No, yeah, I mean, but it's the truth. Unfortunately, we have people out there who will be like, well, it was an unsure time and I'm sure they were doing what they thought was best. No, 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 no. Because, I mean,
Hitler used the same damn excuse, really. Those
yes,
darn Poles. Those
yes.
Poles. We caught one of their soldiers coming on our land. He had a gun. We had to take over the country. Well, we understand. There was a Polish guy in a uniform came into Germany. So so there's always an excuse to take away people's rights, always an excuse to take away man's dignity, always an excuse, always, and there always will be. And it's those who literally do it and form the excuses that should not be in power ever.
And this whole COVID thing. I was listening. I didn't hear it all. Somebody was on Tom Woods' show, and he was talking about literally just almost like privatizing your city. And not privatizing maybe the whole thing, but like your police departments and things like that. Making your city or your town a bastion of freedom. So, fighting against the state, the county, the feds, whatever. And this is something that we really need to look at. Because
City-states.
Yeah, we talk a lot about trying to do good things and getting some good things done at the state level. But sometimes we have to go at a more local level than that. And it might start out with, again, what Sam has talked about here in town with having an alternate market. Like, okay, well, let's say they really screw up the currency, or depending on what they did with COVID, we need to look at doing some other things here so businesses can stay open, people can shop in town. We're going to have to figure out like an alternative marketplace. Well, also, depending on where you live, now Owensville's not so bad. We got some improving to do, but that's just normal. But we're not so bad. But some cities, if people are really fed up, maybe it's time to privatize more. Now, even people on the left sometimes are like, well, you need to just kind of break away from this and all that. But when you start talking about privatizing police or maybe privatizing education, then people are like, whoa, easy, Tiger, easy. Now you're getting nutty. But what's so nutty about it? They're all government entities. Education is a government entity. Police are a government entity. Your fire departments, they have a board. They're a government entity. Privatize some of these things. And the thing is, you privatize it, you automatically gain more control over that department, that thing. Because now, since the city's not taking money from you and then paying the police department and figuring their budget, now the people of the town have absolute say over everything. How many officers are on staff, what their budget is, their equipment, everything. Fire department, ambulance, education, whatever. You now have complete and utter control of that thing. That, folks, is called what? It's called freedom. That's where freedom ultimately lies, when you have complete and utter say-so over something that has to do with your town, your community. Because a lot of people like to talk about community. Sometimes the best way to serve your community is to take control from the government and harness it for yourselves. And again, government doesn't like it when you can show others how inept or irrelevant they can be or useless they are in certain situations. They don't want you to understand that, because they lose a little bit of power and they lose control over how you think and how you feel and how you see things. This is all these things we have to take into consideration here. Nothing is off the table at this point. If the feds continue a trend and you live in certain totalitarian states, I mean, you don't have much choice. You either A, you move out and you find a freer place to live, or B, you take it upon yourself to find like-minded individuals and change the course. Because if you sit and do nothing, you will get exactly what you deserve. And that sounds harsh. But for those who just want somebody else to take care of it all, when things go downhill, you get what you deserve. But you're giving other people what they don't deserve. If not enough people fight for something and it falls apart and tyranny gains another foothold, another inch of ground, not only did you doom yourself, you doomed others around you. And I'm sure most people don't want a tyrannical state around them. But you have to understand, if you don't get involved, even just a little bit, not only are you dooming yourselves, you're dooming your family, your friends, and other people that you might care about. You're dooming all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be a call to action. And it can be in your city, it can be in your county, it can be in your state. The whole federal thing, I'd say give up on that and go state down. Just write the feds off. Because, again, there's one guy that I can think of that I can depend on, Thomas Massie. That's the only one I can depend on at the federal government. He's not our senator. So, I mean, Eric Schmidt might do well. It's hard to say. Things could change once he gets to D.C. You never know. But at the state level, we have such a great chance of doing great freedom things right here in Missouri. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I want to answer. You're right, and I'm going to answer a question in regards to Missouri right now. But
Sure.
Warrior Class 3. I'm sorry, I wasn't at the computer. Warrior Class is asking what we should do about Justin Brown, who beat out Susie Pollack for Missouri State Senate District 16. Should we vote for the Democrat? Okay, that's an excellent question, and I know why he's asking the question. Justin Brown has vowed to try and weaken SEPA. He's a Democrat, but he's often what we call a rhino. He votes more on the liberal side than he does on the Republican side, and he is one man. So I think that it's probably Justin Brown gives into pressure. So I think that if he's in, it's probably better than a Democrat. I think. Don't know real well who he's running against, but vote your conscience. So Justin Brown basically says he is going to try and weaken SEPA. He said it. And we do know that he is getting money from the Sheriff's Association, the Police Chiefs Association, and such. So, and they're getting their money from the federal government. Well, believe me, a Democrat will do the same thing. In fact, there's already 3 different pieces of legislation that I'm aware of that are going to be introduced by Democrats to introduce red flag laws, and we can try to weaken SEPA. But in 2023, and this is a done deal. They'll be pre-filed here in about a month. And so, but I'm not so worried about Democrat bills. I am worried about Republican bills trying to weaken SEPA from the rhinos, from those who pretend to be Republican but act more like Democrats. So you do your conscience on that. I suppose if I were in the district, I would probably vote for the Democrat over Justin Brown. That's me personally. I don't tell anyone how to vote. I don't even recommend, basically how to vote. But I will tell people how I will vote. I have no problem telling people that. And then I give my reasons why. Justin Brown, since he said that he was going to go after SEPA, that's enough for for him to leave office, because SEPA is constitutional. If he doesn't like SEPA, then he's got a problem with the Second Amendment, and that makes him a problem for us. And since we already have a super majority of Republicans, it wouldn't hurt us if Justin Brown was replaced by a Democrat, in my opinion. So that's the answer to the question. So sorry for the interruption there, but I wanted to make sure to get that in.
Oh no, you're absolutely fine, bro. I mean, that's why I have you here. so we can discuss these things because you still know a lot more. You still have a way better understanding of this than I do, and that's why I'm happy that you join me once a month now, so that we can all better understand what's not only important but what's at stake and what some of our lawmakers, really want to do here in the state. You talk about Justin Brown. Oh, I'm going to sink my teeth into SEPA. He may not like the outcome to that. Because
Well,
it doesn't matter
it,
where I go and speak. If I mention SEPA, eyes go, ooh, yeah, we like SEPA.
yeah, it's like we've said this before. SEPA was a very sexy bill that has become law in the state of Missouri, and it's a singular distinction in the United States what Missouri has. The people of Missouri came together to say, yes, we want our Second Amendment rights protected by our politicians. So people called up their representatives, they called up their senators. The SEPA law, HB 85, got more co-sponsors than any other bill that has ever existed before in the state of Missouri. And the state of Missouri is 200 years old. Never has there been so much co-sponsorship. It was a very popular bill. People are saying, yes, we don't want red flag laws in the state. Democrats are going to try and introduce some, by the way, in 2023. 2 red flag laws, if I recall properly. So this is the thing. We always have to protect these rights, and we're going to expect many Democrats to try and take these rights away because they basically are socialists. Now, I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just calling a spade a spade. When you want the government to take away natural rights from the people that they get to maintain themselves, technically that is socialism. And when a government, basically starts exercising their natural rights where you don't get to exercise yours, that's communism. And it gets worse from there. I mean, it's best. I don't know what else to say about it. When Republicans want to weaken SEPA or Republicans say they're against SEPA, we need to be against them, because that is literally a natural right, the right to self-defense. That's what they're basically saying. Well, your right to self-defense is a little too strong. We need to pare down your right to self-defense just a little bit. I know God gave it to you, and Jesus affirmed it in the Gospels, but it's still at the same time, we got to pare it down a little bit because, it's just not right. I mean, law enforcement needs to partner up with the ATF, and if your rights are standing in the way of that, we need our law enforcement. We got to give them more priority than your natural rights that Jesus Christ affirmed in the Gospels. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, you can change the language. If I were talking to a politician right now that was against SEPA, they would say, oh, geez, you are taking this to a whole new level of stupid. I would say to them, I don't think so. I think you are. Because everything you do, it's all about everyone having the same right. Missouri has a very special clause in our Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 2, and it's about equal application of the law. It means the law applies equally to everybody. If there's a red flag law, what you're doing is you're taking some people's natural rights away, and that's actually energy, power. And you're taking that energy or power away from those people that you've taken their natural rights away, and you've given them to the government, adding to the government's power, subtracting from the people's power. That's socialism. I mean, call it what you will, gang. I mean, there's lots of different ways to describe it. Yes, I know I evoked Jesus Christ on this, but he did say, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy a sword. Even Jesus was about self-defense. He didn't say take your sword and go plunder the village. He didn't say that. He was talking about self-defense. If you're attacked, you have the right to defend yourself. You have that right. Jesus, like I said you have that right. And it's a natural law, God's law, anything you want to call it. So Justin Brown, if you end up watching this, if you introduce any legislation to weaken SEPA, we're coming for your door in Jefferson City, and we'll come in numbers, and we'll let you know what the people of Missouri actually think about you wanting to take away our natural rights. You can use any justification you want. You can say it's an emergency. You can say, "Oh, it's a COVID emergency. It's a terrorist emergency. It's homegrown terrorism." We've heard all the excuses before that people use to try and take away people's right to self-defense. We're not buying it, but we will come and let you know, and we'll let all your peers know what we think about you too. And you will end up on the oath breakers list, and we'll make sure that you get a lot of notice, and we'll make you famous. Democrats are going to do this all day long, gang. I mean, we saw an attempt to do that in 2022, and that's a senator from Kansas City area. Gosh darn it, John Rizzo did that. He did the Back the Blue bill, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So he attempted to take away SEPA. That was the design of the bill, and it failed utterly. What I'm saying is I'm not worried about Democrat bills. I'm worried about Republican bills. So Justin Brown, you better not put in a bill going after SEPA, or we're coming after you.
Yeah. I do not want to see that turd burglar doing anything to say. I don't want to see anybody doing anything to SEPA. But I think, I'm sure he has a few people behind him, and it's probably more money than people. I think it would not be in his best political interest to come after SEPA. I think that could be like a Dave Schatz moment with the gas tax, and we see what happened to his political career. He got just destroyed in the primaries, and that makes me happy. I'm not going to lie, because of what he did. And speaking of the gas tax, someone like Catherine Dreher's opponent, Fitzwater, he was all for the gas tax. Let's not forget, if you're in Catherine Dreher's district, your representative at that time pushed it through committee, voted yes for the gasoline tax. So, folks, there's another reason to clean house, not only with the way some of these people decided who was, important and unimportant. The gas tax, there's another big one. You want to vote out the people who decided that the gas tax was awesome? There's another reason to make a big sweeping change here in the state of Missouri in the state houses. These people knew that there's no way on God's green earth that they didn't know, with Biden in office and all that money being printed, that inflation and prices weren't going to blow through the roof. And guess what they did anyway? They pushed through a gas tax. And that tells you that a lot of those people either are unaware or they don't care. And because Schatz held up the whole thing because he had to have his gas tax, he held the place hostage. He held the Senate hostage. Those people who went right along with him should be shown the door in this election. Pick somebody else. Pick a freedom lover. Pick someone who says, hey, you know what we'd like to do when we get in office? We'd like to get rid of that gasoline tax. Because I'm sorry, but I'm driving up and down the road here.
Yep.
And I'm not seeing anywhere where that money's going. I'm not seeing it. I mean, just mowing the ditches.
It's going to Schatz's summer home.
It's got to be. It's not going to the roads, and it's not going to general upkeep. Here will be the interesting thing. Maybe not this year, but let's say next year, when this money has had time to accrue or whatever. You get into the wintertime, and you have a more than average snowfall for the wintertime, for the season. Mm-hmm. And then if we hear excuses, well, we just can't afford salt, we can't afford this. Mm-hmm. Then what do you say? What do you call your rep who voted for the gas tax and say, excuse me, why did you vote for this? They're still telling us they can't afford to run all these trucks and push snow and do. Why did you vote for this? I say don't give them the time, and don't. You shouldn't have to. You should just remove them in this election, and then your frustration can be pointed directly at the DOT to say, okay, you got your money, you were crying for it, what is this mess? So instead of going to the representative that screwed you over, you can go straight to the department where the money was supposed to be going for certain things and you can point your righteous anger at them instead.
Yep, and hold their feet to the fire on this. In fact, I've talked to reps about this who actually voted for the gas tax, and they are angry because they're seeing that, potholes are still not getting filled. They're still not getting work done on the roads, and they have that tax money. So there's an accountability issue here. Our accountability, literally on our level, is to the representatives who voted yes for it. So you hold that against them. That's a mark against them because they, unfortunately, quote unquote, trusted the system. But there's another story to the gas tax, John, and that's because the gas tax was used to hold SAFA hostage, as you had mentioned before. And that's another story that we don't really talk about because we can't truly authenticate, and we don't want to pass bad information about what happens in the Missouri legislature for fear that we lose credibility. But it does look like that's what's happened, is that the Senate not the Senate, but the House in Missouri, the Missouri House of Representatives was held hostage because they couldn't pass SAFA until they dealt with the gas tax bill, and that was Schatz's. So, at any rate, consequently, that was an interesting one because I think that's the one where all the Republicans voted yes and all the Democrats voted no. So it's kind of funny that way, but that's the way it went through, I think.
It's just, it's frustrating.
It is. And these are by the way, for those of you who are watching this later on or, just kind of peruse, YouTube and fall into this channel, we deal with the state politics. And for those of you who are really more into federal stuff, I encourage you to take a deeper look into your own state. Yes, it's kind of fun what we do. We have fun doing it. We're deeply involved with our state legislature. We know the legislators. We visit with them on a regular basis. We email them, we call them, and we visit them up in Jeff City, which is our state capital. And we are actually getting things done in the state of Missouri. We're climbing up the Freedom Index very quickly. So I encourage people to watch what we do. But what I really want to encourage people to do is if you're in another state, start a liberty-based movement like this one on your own and start freedom moving in your state. We want someone to compete with, and it looks like the New Hampshire project's at a stalemate. They can't really grow anymore because, and they did it backwards. And John, we've talked about this before, and I'm not sure if it was on one of your programs or not, but I've been asked to quantify why I believe the Free State Project is at a stalemate. And that's because they did things differently than we did. They started by lowering taxes first. That was their first priority. What they did is they did a great job too. I mean, no one's criticizing them over that other than they did it first. What they did when they lowered all their taxes and became the lowest tax state in the entire United States of America is it basically encouraged the socialists from New York to move in because socialists don't like to pay taxes either, but they don't mind totalitarian government. So these basically it became the Granite State Project as far as the socialist moving. I use the word socialist, here, but let's just say the hard left from New York that had money and basically wanted to move to a place where they could protect their money. And so they moved to New Hampshire, because taxes are very, very low there, actually. So now they have a bunch of socialists in there that keep trying to push for totalitarian legislation, not higher taxes, just more control over people's lives. And so now that's it. They're constantly on the defense in the Free State Project now, trying to stop them from introducing more totalitarian government. So you have people from the Free State Project holding government offices, elected offices, and people from the Granite State Project. And you have your right and your left all over again, fighting over everything and getting nothing done. Now, in the state of Missouri, we're doing it differently. We're not attacking our taxes first, although people have been critical of us, saying we need lower corporate income tax, for instance. That would encourage corporations to come here. And that's correct. It would. But what we're doing is we're getting our freedom back first. That's what we're doing. Freedom-based legislation, natural law, our natural rights, our God-given rights. That's what we're securing first. And we're using anti-commandeering doctrine to do it. That means we're using the 10th Amendment to help get the federal government off our backs in the state of Missouri. SAPA is a great example of that. In the Second Amendment Preservation Act that we passed in 2021, the state of Missouri no longer follows federal gun law. You heard me correctly. Federal gun law still exists. You know, they can pass whatever laws they want, but we don't enforce those laws in the state of Missouri. And we have safeguards and backups, basically, for when the federal government comes onto Missouri soil and tries to enforce federal gun laws on Missouri citizens, not on FFLs. That's a different deal altogether, gang, but on Missouri citizens, then you can call your sheriff so your sheriff can come and get the ATF off your property. So our Second Amendment rights are 100% secured and protected in the state of Missouri under SAPA. And with SAPA, in conjunction with Amendment 5 to the Missouri Constitution, it's going to be difficult to pass red flag laws here, but not impossible. So that's why we have to watch out for these red flag laws whenever they pop up. When they're introduced by Democrats, we generally don't really watch them very much, but if we're watching for rhino Republicans to try and introduce them or to weaken SAPA like Justin Brown has threatened to do. Justin Brown's a Republican in Senate District 16, by the way. So that's what we do in the state of Missouri, and we're going to make silver and gold money again. We're also going to continue working towards all kinds of other freedoms. And one of them is basically parents' right to choose on vaccinations. Susie's not in the House of Representatives anymore, but it's my understanding that someone's going to carry the torch on that bill for next year, so that parents can choose whether or not their kids get the beer flu vaccine instead of the government deciding. And if, you know, and everyone says, oh, that's old news, they're not going to push that anymore. Well, they did it once. They'll probably try it again. We might as well get that freedom so that parents don't have to put up with the nonsense from local health authorities that are getting their marching orders from the World Health Organization. That's not what we need in Missouri. We need parents to be able to make the decisions for their kids. And we need government off of parents' backs, because parents should be the people who raise the child, not government. This isn't, it takes a village Hillary Clinton state. You know, this is very much, you know, God-fearing parents have the right to decide, you know, what vaccinations, along with their doctors, you know, what vaccines, you know, that they want to give their kids. Not this 27 vaccination schedule anymore. This nonsense has to stop. So that's what we do here in the state of Missouri, and we're continuing to make progress. Last year, we don't have any successful legislation that we were, you know, shepherding, and that's because of Dean Plocker. But at the same time, we were able to stop HJR 79, which was every bit as important as getting SAPA done for keeping our rights to a ballot initiative. Because the Republicans were trying to take away the ballot initiative from Missourians, taking away the only democratic, you know, people talk about our democracy all the time. We don't have a democracy, but we do have a democratic process in the state of Missouri. There's two of them. One of them is actually going into a voting booth and actually voting for a politician. And the second is access to a ballot initiative. And a ballot initiative is a way to get around the General Assembly when they won't do something that you want, or you can't get something done through them. We can collect signatures to actually have something put on the ballot. Not all states can do this, but Missouri is one of them. And so we're trying to get that, you know, basically secured and kept for all of us all the time. And so that's what we are. I mean, we're just basically a group held together by our love for liberty, our love for freedom, and getting to know our state legislators, actually promoting good legislation and shutting down bad legislation, starting to point out the oath breakers in public office in the state of Missouri. And we're not, like I said, like the Free State Project has gone after taxes first. We're not going to do that. We're going to secure all of our freedoms first, or at least the bulk of them, before we start going for taxes. Because what that does is that encourages other liberty-loving people to move to the state of Missouri. So we don't get people like the Granite State Project, the socialists, the people from California and New York and Illinois that want to move into Missouri and take advantage of the low taxes. So they, and then also on top of that, encourage, gun laws, encourage more censorship, and take away people's rights, to choose what vaccines their kids get. So at any rate, that's a little bit more about us and what we do. And we're very effective. We have a great group of people. I was just recalling the other day when it was first Jimmy and I going up to Jefferson City all the time. And then Casey Rich joined us. And then another guy by the name of John, joined us. And then, Scott joined us. Ganai joined us. And, and then it just kept growing and snowballing to the point where we had literally, which is wonderful. And John, you were there for this, where we had 12 people going up and Bruce, sorry about that. My dogs are trying to wrestle. We had literally 12 people. We were called the Gang of 12 up in Jefferson City. And by the way, it doesn't matter what state you're in. If you have 12 people going to a representative's office in your state capital or your senator's office in your state capital, that's a huge number. They're not used to dealing with that many people coming to their office at one time for one issue. They're not used to that. So, basically, they'll actually take the time to talk to you. They want to know what you're there for. I mean, you'll get talked about in the state capitol if you travel around as 12 people, trust me. And that's part of the power of what we do. We call it knock and shock. We go up to Jeff City, we knock on the door, and we go in there, we talk to the reps, we talk to the senators, we let them know what we want, why we want it. And that's important too. You don't just go up there and puff up your chest and say, you work for me. They don't respond well to that. Listen to what they have to say. Listen to their point of view. And then knock down all their arguments with common sense and better arguments. And that's what we're really good at. And we have changed a lot of minds up in Jefferson City. Shutting down HJR 79, that was just a major victory for our group. We protected the ballot initiative. And when that comes up next year, it'll look more like HJR 132, where they just affect the vote side, but not the signature collection side. So, and that satisfies a lot of requirements. So, once again, that's what we're about. We just want our freedom. We want government off our back. We don't want government involved in every aspect of our lives. We want our liberty. And so we're fighting for it. And guess what? We're getting it. It's actually happening. So those who pay attention to our group, keep watching us. But I do encourage other states to start liberty groups like ours and get your state, to be more free as well. And a lot of people are moving to Missouri because of, our organization and SEPA and what we did with SEPA. And SEPA was a group effort, by the way. So there's a lot of people involved in getting SEPA done. And then let's not to mention, the fact Ron Calzone carried that torch for 8 years, 5 years before we even got started. So we came in the last 3 years of the project. So sometimes, things take time as well. But every state needs SEPA, like the state of Missouri's, with an enforcement mechanism. If your state has SEPA, but you don't have the enforcement mechanism, you have nothing. You have nothing. You have absolutely no way to enforce stopping the ATF from joining forces with local law enforcement and taking away people's rights. So if you have SEPA without enforcement mechanism, you have a lot of hot air. I'm sorry to tell you that, Montana. I'm sorry to tell you that, Arizona. Sorry to tell you that, New Hampshire. You guys have a lot of hot air. You guys need to work harder to secure the rights of your people.
And to add what you were saying about New Hampshire is that, where, and you said this before too, Patrick, where we differ is they have to recruit people to come to their state. And we don't have to do that. We got a lot of freedom lovers living right here in this state. We do not have to say, oh, please come to our state, move to our state. And the system they set up is kind of cool because, they've got this whole thing set up. We'll help you move into your house. We'll help you get
Get a
everything set up.
job, you know,
everything. It's a great thing that they did, but they have to pull people to them. And I think if you set a good example, like you've been doing, like the Missouri Freedom Initiative has been doing, things like that. If you set a good example and you show people that you're serious about freedom, they're going to come because they see it. You don't have to beg them to help you get the ball rolling because you've already got the ball rolling. And they're like, oh, look what the guns and taxes and maybe property rights and all have improved greatly. Again, getting rid of corporate income tax down the road, maybe getting rid of personal property tax down the road. That is a sending up a flare to freedom lovers everywhere that says, hey, we take our liberty really seriously here in the state of Missouri. And if you like freedom and you want to help us fight, we're more than happy to have you. I'm just glad we don't have to beg people to move here to start that whole thing. That it's
Right.
been going on, and we have people right here that have been living in the state for a long time. And now we have people who have moved here. Jesse Root, he saw what the state of Washington was moving to, and he saw the direction we were heading, and he split and came here, and he said he knows some other people that might be moving here. Well, Jesse's active. He's going to be active in it. Some of his friends may be very active too. So because of the things that have been going on, we've already convinced some people to move this direction without having to coax them or promise them things. They just come here because they see the examples that have been set. And that is, to me, the best way to get to where we want to be, is we're literally lighting the lamp of liberty here in the state, and that light is bringing people who love freedom here without having to, again, coax them and beg them to come. That to me is the best thing.
Yeah, and in fact, if we're not encouraging a large amount of people to move here at any given time, we're not, shoving up our house market like New Hampshire did. New Hampshire's housing market just went off the Richter scale.
Yeah.
That's a real big problem over there. Plus, there's not enough jobs over there anymore now. And then that's because of the Granite State Project that moved in, shortly after the Free State Project started, because they got rid of all their taxes. And once again, it's a complicated thing to discuss, or even for many people, I think, to actually understand how good an idea the Free State Project was, but it was executed improperly, in my opinion. And by the way, that doesn't mean I'm smarter than those guys. I think most of them are probably smarter than me, but I wouldn't have done it that way. And of course, what we're doing with the Missouri Freedom Initiative, we're not pushing for the lowest taxes in the United States. We're not, the grocery store tax, we had a great opportunity. We just didn't know that there was a complication with the Missouri Constitution, and we work with our Constitution. We're not going to say, okay, let's go ahead and do it anyway. No, we're not. We have to address the fact that this is being touched on by the Constitution. If we were to break our word and say, well, we're willing to, make a fundamental change in a law, even though it's against the Constitution, because it's to our benefit, we would be hypocrites, and we'd be no better than most of the politicians. So we're not going to do that. But you're right. The Free State Project was a great idea, but they have to import people to make it work. And it seems like they've actually hit an impasse, because the more people the Free State Project imports, the more people the Granite State Project imports. And so it's like a constant, never-ending stalemate that they can't seem to get away from, because the people are enjoying their low taxes there. But along with their low taxes, they're involved, it's extremely high real estate prices. For a Rambler home, 1,400 square foot home on a postage stamp property in New Hampshire, I've seen, $750,000. So, that's the kind of, property we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually seen it, online with Zillow. So yeah, we're doing it differently. We're gonna go ahead and make our state free first. And then, because that will, if it's going to encourage anyone to move here, it's going to encourage conservatives and people who love liberty to move to our state. They'll say, we'll put up with the taxes as long as we can have the freedom. We get that. And so if we did it in reverse, basically we'd be more likely to import, people like the Granite State Project. These are people who are, I don't want to use the word Democrat because socialist is more appropriate. Then socialists will move to Missouri to take advantage of the low taxes. And then what they want is they want larger, much more totalitarian government. So they will push towards that end while they're enjoying the low taxes, which is what the Free State Project did. So at any rate, my friends in the Free State Project, I did not try to offend you. I'm just, I see it as I see it, and I'm calling it as I see it. And that is that you guys are at a stalemate. I don't think you guys can actually continue your project anymore. You're countered by an equal and opposite force. And we're trying to prevent that in Missouri. So we're going to work on our freedoms first. You guys enjoy your low taxes.
Yeah, we'll get to that soon enough. We got some bigger fish to fry, I guess you could say.
Yep.
When it comes to freedom. Again, I'm sure everybody would love low taxes, but we have some of our natural rights that we would like to get back first. Property rights, of course, the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, things like that. Those things we'd like to get back first, and then we can work on the taxation side. But yeah, we got to get our natural rights back first.
Sure.
And
so, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's how. I mean, yeah, low taxes and that draws people in, but when your natural rights are not being infringed upon, they're not being crushed, they're not being stomped on, and people see that you can come here and not have to be scared of some bureaucracy jumping down your throat because you did X, Y, or Z, it's still going to draw a lot of people. A lot of people.
Yep. And that's what we're trying to encourage here. In fact, people say, oh, SAPE has failed. The Missouri Free State Project has failed. We don't have a name for our project. We're just the Missouri Freedom Initiative. That's the name of our group. And that group is much larger than me. I may be, seen as kind of the head of the organization, but I'm certainly not the smartest. And I just provide organization. That's all I do. And these people act freely on their own accord. Basically we go as groups sometimes when we go visit Jeff City, but let's talk real quick about the St. Louis shooting. Okay. We can't talk about it too much because this is YouTube. But those of you who may not have heard about this, we recently had a school shooting in which 2 people were killed. And so this was conducted by an African-American gentleman. So, and that's why it did not make it to the mainstream media. That's why you never heard about this. An African-American gentleman went in apparently with an AR-15, and he wounded like 7 people and killed 2. And so we actually had, quote unquote, a mass shooting in St. Louis. And people say that's a failure of the system because we have to take guns. No, it's not. We talked about many, many, many aspects of how a free market works. How when governments, basically start playing footsie with corporations, free markets end very quickly. But that's true with freedoms too. And when the government, and we talked about equal application under the law, Article 1, Section 2 of the Missouri Constitution. And when you create something called a gun-free zone, you've actually eliminated people's natural rights to self-defense within that land, that area that's considered, quote unquote, a gun-free zone. That's what has happened in America. The gun-free zones are an abject failure, and no one looks at reversing that. And then, the teachers can be optionally armed. If the gun-free zones are removed and teachers may or may not have concealed weapons, people would be much less likely to go into schools and shoot people. Now, why is it that people go into schools and shoot people? It's because they're gun-free zones. They're much more likely to be able to carry out whatever it is they want to carry out without themselves being hurt. That's why they go. That's why most mass shootings happen in quote unquote gun-free zones. So we have removed the natural rights from people who go into this gun-free zone. We have seen that they are fish in a barrel, and that people can somehow still get inside those schools and shoot up people. The answer is not to take away more people's natural rights and to selectively decide that the entire country is a gun-free zone for AR-15s and AK-47s, ultimately everything from 9mm to 22s. That is not the way to proceed here. Taking away people's natural rights does not solve the problems with men's hearts. We do have mental illness in this country. We do have evil people in this country, just like every country has. And unfortunately, a gun-free zone provides them a place to conduct their evil deeds, to get as much damage done as possible before a good guy with a gun arrives. So why we can't have that discussion is beyond me. Why we can't talk about how gun-free zones have failed is beyond me. I don't understand that we are limited to not having that particular discussion for some reason. The mainstream media never talks about removing gun-free. It's always about taking away guns from people. That is the way you stop this. Well, I told you about, when I was young, I only knew one person my age that died, and that was a car accident. Well, cars can be used to kill people too. So do we take everyone's cars away? No, they've never discussed that. Planes can be used to kill people. Should we take away airplanes? Well, that's never been discussed. The only thing that's discussed is taking away guns. And in England, where they've taken away guns, they killed each other with knives. And now they've had to reduce the quote-unquote knife population. They've had to have red flag laws with knives. They reduced the size of the knife that you can carry in public to 1 inch. In fact, I believe it's 3/4 of an inch now. So that's the largest knife you can carry in public. Your options for self-defense are dwindling in England. We don't want to go down that route. The issue here is, and I know that everyone will say, "Oh, that's not right." Let anyone who wants to carry a gun, and let them do it in a concealed fashion so nobody knows who's armed. That's the best way to handle things, because even evil people have to take into consideration the guy standing right next to him might have a gun, and the guy 20 feet away from him might have a gun. Might not be a good idea for him to brandish his own firearm and start taking people's lives simply because he's a product of the school system and he's never had a girlfriend or whatever his excuse is for doing this. I'm sorry, I went on a rant again.
Well, and here's the thing that bugs me the most about this conversation. Yes, we gotta write more gun laws and everything else. The thing that bugs me the most about this whole deal is how many of these people have been on psychotropic drugs, and that does not get brought up. That goes, whew, it just gets tossed aside. Because the
pharmaceutical companies are the advertisers on the news media.
Right. But it's still the thing. It's like, okay. And here's the thing, and I understand. We do have a mental health problem in this country. Now, some people want to go, well, we should have a government mental health system. And it's like, no, we shouldn't. But what we have to look at is causation. And then we see a lot of people, years ago even, I don't know how many people I talked to. I went to the doctor and told him I wasn't just feeling myself and all this, and he prescribed me Prozac. I'm like, just like that, you got Prozac because you weren't feeling quite yourself? No. Well, maybe you should talk to a therapist or, something. Maybe you have a mineral deficiency. Let's do some blood work because, a magnesium deficiency can cause depression, anxiety, all these things. None of that. Stick them on Prozac. And we have a lot of people who are on some pretty potent psychotropic drugs. Here's my issue. I don't think those people, maybe they don't make their appointments. Maybe their levels should be adjusted or they shouldn't be on them at all or something's going on. But the care that coincides with the giving of the drug is not there. Maybe those people aren't being looked after like they should. Should it be the government's job? Absolutely not. But we do. And then again, going back to COVID again, COVID caused a mental health crisis in this country, made it 10 times worse. I think that's a safe number. And yeah, we have a mental health problem in this country. But when you have a government and a media working together to divide people down the middle, split them up, and have two feuding groups so they can keep going to the bank, and then the fear porn and the constant negativity and the scare. Look at this scary thing and this scary thing and this scary thing. There's nothing. You don't see a lot of positive imagery. It's not hard for people. Even myself, sometimes I'm like, good Lord. Even myself, I find myself sometimes just like bummed out because I look around and I have to break myself out of the funk and go, okay, let's do something different. Do something you enjoy or have a conversation with somebody and just.
Well, the obvious reason you were bummed out is you were deficient in Prozac, right?
Yeah, it was probably a Prozac deficiency. Good thing I didn't go to the doctor and have that remedied.
Yeah, that's right.
There are times, that I get in a funk and I'm just like, what is the problem? And then I do what I can to remedy the situation, and that is not going to my doctor and saying, well, I just don't feel like myself. I just try to do things that break me out of the funk, like going to that concert. That was, and it seemed to some people like, well, that seems silly. It was a huge boost to my well-being. Going out and being in a crowd with a bunch of people who are all there to listen to awesome music, meet your favorite band, things like that, get some merchandise, all that stuff was a huge boost. I mean, I was just riding high on Wednesday and Thursday, and I'm still feeling a little bit of that high. But I've spoken about this before on my show where I just tell people, listen, almost every single person is passionate about something. Use that something. I'm not saying you have to go out and make money from it. Find something you're passionate about and dig into it because it does help you get through things. Sometimes it's just music. Sometimes it's art. For me, it was photography. This podcast helps me alleviate stuff because I get to blow off some steam. But find something that you're passionate about and and involve yourself in it because that keeps you from thinking about all the nasty crap. If you have to be by yourself to do it, whatever. Or if it takes several people. But just to come home, sit and watch the news, and bake and stew in that slime that they produce is not conducive to a good mental well-being or physical well-being for that matter. But it just... I do agree that there is a mental health problem in this country, but asking government to come solve it, I mean, you might as well just go around and start running people over with cars because, the damage is going to be irreversible for a lot of those people who would get involved in a government run. Because, again, we know what's going to happen. They're just going to throw psychiatric medicine at them. That's all they're going to do because there's going to be a financial incentive for them to do that. They're going to be like, hey.
I agree.
I
think you're right. And it's a systemic problem with our culture today because, any problem you have can be solved with a pharmaceutical product.
Yeah.
Shoot. Every single problem you have, restless leg syndrome, we've got a drug for that. You're feeling a little bit anxious, we have a drug for that. You're feeling a little depressed, we have a drug for that. Shoot, if you're fat, we have a drug for that. Do you smoke? We have a drug for that. It's all about drugs, isn't it? So, and that's kind of what I went on. I know I had a long, drawn-out thing about, quote-unquote, the beer flu and everything. But the drug they have for the beer flu will take your life. It's happened. People are dropping dead. The stillbirths are going on right now. People have very severe, and all you need to do is go check out social media, and you can find a whole myriad of stories of autoimmune disorders where eventually it will take someone's life. But guess what? They got a pill for that. So they created a problem with your body with the serum, but now they have a pill you can take that can alleviate some of your symptoms. But guess what? You'll get new side effects from those, but don't worry, they'll have a pill for that too.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Years ago, and I mean years ago, when I was a junior or senior in high school, I don't remember if I was I think it was a psych class I was taking. My teacher said something to me or said something to the class that didn't register at the time. And then a few years ago, I started dwelling on it. And she told the whole class, she goes, "We're constantly being told that we have a drug problem in this country." She said, "But you know what? What do you get on TV and you see? You have a headache, pop a pill, we got a pill for that. You have this, take a pill for that. You got this, take a pill for that. Got this, take a pill for that." She goes, "It's constantly in your face advertising, we got a pill for this, pill for this, pill for this, pill for that." And I just like, okay, the teacher's going on a rant, whatever. But then for some reason, I was thinking about, drugs, you get on a rant, oh, drug problem. And those words just started echoing in my head. And I graduated 31 years ago. So this is probably 25 years ago or so, or maybe 23. And I was like, holy crap. It really just hit me really hard. Like, oh my God, this woman was saying this. I'm 17 years old and this woman's muttering this, and I just completely it went down the memory hole for a while. But she was right. She's right. And this was way before we see what we're seeing now. And so I went, and actually what's funny is when I was doing pest control work, I actually got sent to her house a couple times, and I told her, I said, you said something to us in class one time, and I said it resonated with me a long time ago. And I told her, and she just kind of chuckled. She's like, "Yeah, I remember telling a lot of my classes that." She said, "'Cause it's true." And I said, yeah, it is. Don't have too many teachers like that anymore, unfortunately, because they're so controlled by the curriculum that they're supposed to teach. But it was just, I don't know. It's funny as you get older and you think back to stuff that someone told you growing up, and then you get to a certain point and it starts resonating with you, and you're like, holy smokes.
Yep.
That person had it dead on, and it's so freaking awesome. Well, Patrick, we've been at it for how long have we been at it?
Nearly 3 hours.
Yeah, I've got to go to work tomorrow, so I'm going to go ahead and now the links to your YouTube channel and the website are in the description. But tell everybody where they can find you at, and go over again about your YouTube channel, soon to be Odyssey channel. But let everybody know where to find you at, so anybody listening on the radio side or the podcast side can go there and find you.
You bet. The best and easiest way to find us is just go to MoFree, M-O for Missouri, free, FREE.org. And there we'll have, access to all of our socials, what we're up to, what we're doing. We're going to do a facelift on the website here pretty soon. We're going to start actually selling some merchandise on our website, T-shirts and, a few other items to help fund the organization. And funding is relative. I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot of money to run our organization, but I paid for everything, basically from the beginning until now and everything. And there's been some donations from some folks. In fact, I think a couple of them are in right now. And I want to thank Voodoo Queen and Gary Ride very, very much for their donations to the organization. It has been quite helpful. But that's what we do, gang. I mean, we're literally we're drawn together, not by memberships, not by membership dues, not by, a card carrying member of the Missouri Freedom Initiative. We're just friends that came together because we all believe in freedom and liberty, and we work together to work with our state legislature, promote good legislation, and stop the bad legislation so we can keep Missouri as free as humanly possible. And in fact, just by getting SEPA, we moved from, the state of Missouri moved from 15 to 11 on the Freedom Index just by getting SEPA done alone. And once again, our organization was just a part of that. There was lots of people involved, but we were definitely involved in that project. And in fact, many of the people that are with us in the comments section were with us to help get SEPA done, such as Ganai, Casey Rich, Voodoo Queen, and probably others that I'm forgetting right now. But just, you don't have to listen to our words. See what we do. Watch what we do. You guys will be able to see us in action again in 2023. We do live videos from the Capitol when we're there, and we're working on projects up there. We have lots of people that literally we just absolutely love up in Jeff City. We have some folks up there that we have bones to pick with too. So, you know, it's give or take, you know, pretty much like anything else in life, but we're effective. We get the job done. And in some cases, we can't get something good through, like this year, 2022, because of Dean Plocker, as the floor leader of the House of Representatives, decided to stop any liberty-based legislation from going through the legislature. We had to fight him, and we lost, quite frankly. In fact, Missouri lost, is what it really comes down to. And he's a very powerful man. He's got a lot of corporate dollars behind him. He's a Republican, or a rhino, as we call him. He doesn't vote the right way to be considered a conservative. But it's the power of organizations like ours exposing people like that. We can still get things done. And, John, I want to say thank you to you for coming up to Jeff City. You've been up there multiple times. You're a veteran now. So you see how we operate. You see how we get things done up there. And, you know, basically, thank you for being a part of it. You know, and, you know, basically just you coming up there and working with us strengthens us. Anyone who comes up there and you know, goes and does knock and shock, what we call knock and shock, actually not only legitimizes us, because we're actually quite huge. Not all of our people go up to Jeff City. Some people just want to work the phones or do email. But at the same time, it's the same concept as anything else. We're not a one issue organization. You know, we want everything basically humanly possible done to increase the freedoms for the people of Missouri. We want small government and ultimately low taxes. So that's what we do. MoFree.org is where you can find us. And I just want to thank everyone who listened in. And if you're in another state, please contact me. If you want to know how to start your own freedom-based organization in your state, I'll tell you exactly how I started. And, you know, started getting this group together. And once again, I have no rights to saying I'm the smartest person in this group. I just happen to be the guy who kind of organized it in the beginning, along with another guy by the name of Jimmy.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, thanks so much for your time. Thanks to everybody who watches the live stream, downloads, listens on the radio, and the new sponsor. Greatly appreciate each and every single one of you. Appreciate the Missouri Freedom Initiative folks, too, because they've been a big help in growing this podcast, growing the numbers. So big thank you to you guys as well, because you guys are in here every week posting questions, making comments, and taking part in a live stream. And it makes my job way easier, especially when I'm doing interviews with people that I haven't talked to before. You guys come up with great questions and everything. So greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Again, next week, not quite sure if I'll be here. I have a feeling I will be, and it's probably more than likely just going to be to discuss the outcome of the elections and maybe a couple other issues. But with that, I bid you farewell. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you more than likely, next week here on the Missouri Liberty Report. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.